About 3 years ago, I thought I was being followed by a creature I would describe as a goblin. Since then, other people have told me that it probably was a demon or a ghost, and I thought I'd tell you the scary story that happened to me that inspired me to tell other people's scary stories. Like, looking back, I don't actually know if I believe it happened. Like, it did happen, but I don't believe that could have happened to me. So I was at a spa in West Yorkshire, and we were staying, there's like 6 of us in an apartment. I was on a sofa bed in the lounge, and there was another sofa bed. These beds were so uncomfortable, and I don't sleep very well on an uncomfortable bed, and I usually get migraines and headaches. And I woke up about 5 a.m. in the morning because my headache was just getting really bad because of how uncomfortable I was, and I decided to get up, get dressed, go and try and use the gym or the spa facilities. However, they didn't open until about 7 a.m. So I had to sneak back into the apartment, and I had to get back into the sofa bed because all the lights were off and everybody was asleep, and I just sat there on my phone scrolling. Now, the natural texture of my hair is pretty crazy, and it's often in the way all the time. And I was having my arm behind my head, propping myself up while I was scrolling, and I could feel something tickle my arm, and I thought it was just the texture of my hair. But it happened one too many times that I shat myself and thought it was a spider. I've had a spider caught in my hair before. It was trapped in a curl, and it was the worst experience ever. And I panicked, thinking, oh my God, there's a spider running riot around my head. And I quickly sat up and looked in the direction where I thought a spider would be. So I didn't see a spider. Instead, my eyes kind of focused past the arm of the sofa, and it looked like I saw like a little head. Like, imagine like this silhouette of a head. Immediately, like I felt like that uncanny valley feeling. I was like, that's not right. But I thought about everything it could possibly be, thinking it's a lamp, it's a shadow, it's a bag, like it's definitely not a head. I decided to ignore it and lay back down, but I kept my eyes on it while I lay back down. And as I laid back down, the head like peered up like this. Again, I was thinking, what's casting this really weird shadow? And while my eyes were fixated on it, I saw it go back down. And that's when I decided to go closer to it, because I wanted to see what was making this shadow or this shape. Now, as I leant closer to it, it didn't move, but I started to see an outline of a face, and I was probably like this far away from it, like face to face. And I could see, the first thing I saw was its mouth. It was like a huge mouth with really janky, horrible, like missing teeth. Its eyes were so far back that it kind of didn't look like it had any eyes. They were just kind of like hollow black shapes. Its hair, it was basically bald, but it had like wire strands of hair, and its skin colour looked like a grey colour, and it also looked like it had a shiny or wet texture to it. As soon as I saw its features, I screamed, "What the fuck is that?" And it woke up my mother-in-law, who was with me in the same room, and she turned on the lights, and I said, "There's something behind the sofa." She looked, and there's nothing there. I genuinely believe that something was there. Even to this day, I've been thinking about its face a lot lately and what it could have been. But because I woke everyone up and no one was there, or nothing was there, everybody kind of took the piss out of me. Like, oh, you were dreaming. We had a great trip at the spa, but Jordan thought she saw like a ghost. I did feel kind of stupid, so I left it at that, and I didn't really talk about it. But the following months, I think it was about 2.5 months, so many things started happening. I mean, to briefly go over, I have made other videos about this, but I kept on feeling like I kept on seeing something quite small, like run past me all the time. Things were like being moved. I felt like I was going crazy because I thought I was doing it myself. Like, I would find my toothbrush like in the bin and my phone in the fridge. Pictures that were on the wall would be on the floor, and I think, like, have I done that? Have I done that? It was during like the work from home period, and I had a different job then, and the door knocked because it was the postman, and I went downstairs after being on a Zoom call. When I came upstairs, everything on my desk was unplugged. Everything. And I was genuinely thinking that I was doing it to myself. So I was scared that I was just like forgetting stuff. Like, and I was scared that I was like haunting my mind was haunting itself, because to me, like, not knowing that you're doing that is as scary as something paranormal. Then when I finally realised that I thought it was a goblin was because sounds so fucking weird. I was taking my dog out for a wee one night before we went to bed. And at the bottom of the garden of the house I was in at the time had like a little table where we'd feed the birds and squirrels nuts. And it was like 11 p.m. at night, and it was November, it was cold. I started hearing like little taps on the floor, and I was thinking like, what's that? And I looked down and I noticed peanuts were being thrown at me. These peanuts were on the table, like right at the bottom of the garden. And I looked at the garden and my dog was growling at the fence. And there was a tiny arm, like a baby arm, leaning over this like 6-foot fence, grabbing bunches of peanuts and yeeting them with force across the garden. I told you it sounds so fucking weird. The reason why I connected it together with being what I saw at the spa was because I saw the colour of its skin on its arm, and it was this silvery grey colour. Anyway, I was like, holy shit, I'm being haunted. What's going on? Still decided not to confide in anyone. I didn't confide in anyone. And then it was near Christmas time at this point, and me and my husband were like out shopping. He was in like a vintage bookshop, and I was waiting outside because I just find those shops smell. And there was like a witchy shop, you know, like what type of witchy shop I mean, like opposite me. And I was just kind of like lurking in this corridor. All of this stuff was inside in like a really old mill building. And a woman like came up to me. I honestly can't remember how she opened up this conversation, but it was weird. And she basically told me, without me saying really anything to her other than like looking at her like that, she said that I have an attachment. It's called a low vibrational entity. It likes scaring me. I need to ignore it. I need to stop thinking about it because it's like thriving off my fear. Then she told me to go into the shop. She could have been a sales lady, who knows. She told me to go into the shop, buy a candle. It was a white candle. And she says, when I'm alone and when I feel calm enough to do so, light the candle, tell it to go, and don't burn out the candle. When the candle's blown out, open the window, and like, that's it, it's done. I bought this candle and thought nothing of it. Didn't really do anything until I think it was just before Christmas. I was sat in our bedroom at the time, and before I just had a bath, and I thought my dog had entered the room while I was having a bath because I saw something small and the bathroom door opened, and when I looked, nothing was there. My dog wasn't there, and I thought, I don't like being vulnerable in the bath and something like watching me, and that's what made me scared enough to do it. So I went into my bedroom. I got this candle. I felt like an absolute idiot when I did it. I got this line from Loie Lane because I remember watching her years ago, and it was, I fill my life with love and light, because that's the only thing I could think of to say. And I kept on telling it to go, and I just kind of sat there. No, I'm going to sound like an absolute weirdo. I was just kind of in the zone, like legs crossed, breathing. I filled my life with love and light, and all of a sudden my head tipped backwards. I let out this really big sigh, and I felt like my jaw was like touching the floor. That's how big the sigh was. And when I looked up, the candle had blown out and everything stopped. I had no more weird attachment. Since speaking about this, people have said it was probably something called a duendes, or I don't know, like a ghost or a djinn. I still think I can be talked out of it. I think someone can say to me, oh, you were just in a really rough patch of your life. But that's my scary story, and I thought I'd share it again.
Do you guys want to hear a scary story? A follower actually sent me this in yesterday in response to the story that I had posted, and it chilled me to the bone, so I have to share with you guys. This person did want to be kept anonymous, so this girl had told me that when she was 16, 17, somewhere in there, and the story happened to her like 10 or 12 years ago, something like that, that she had picked up a ghost in her car, but she really thinks it was more demonic, and what happened to her was extremely frightening. She told me she was at a party with her friends, and like many party stories happen, someone thought it was a bright idea to bust out a Ouija board, and they did the Ouija board. She was very uncomfortable the whole time. She didn't want to be there. Things, I guess, crazy things started happening. Excuse my speech. She didn't really detail that too much, that part of it, but she said that she was so upset by the experience and that she was trying to wait for her friends to leave because I guess she was driving one of the people driving, like Dee Dee. And she finally said, I'm just gonna leave, and she left. So she tells me that she opened up her back driver's side door to like set her purse down or something in it, and at the same time her driver's door is open. And she said that when she turned around to like go towards driver's side, get in the car, and she was just gonna slam her door shut, she heard a very deep, gravelly voice yell, "Wait." And she said it sounded really loud, like it was right next to her, but also like it was far away, if that makes sense. Instantly got chills, and then her back door slams all by itself. So she's very unsettled. She gets, in her car, and she just wants to get home and forget this all happened. She said right when she gets into the car, she has a feeling of overwhelming dread and just straight fear. She said she felt like something was watching her. She felt like something was in her car. And I guess at one point, like coming to the drive, when she hit a red light, apparently she looked in her back seat and like double checked, no one's in her car. But she said the feeling was so strong, she felt like someone was right behind her. At this stoplight, okay, it turns green, and then, like I said, she had just double checked, no one's in the car, so she turns her head to start driving because she sees out of the peripheral vision of her eye, light turns green. She she checks the mirror, like, mirror in front of your car, in the middle, internal, you know what I'm saying. When she looks in the mirror, she sees, as she's just, again, double checked, made sure no one's in her car, she sees a man who looks extremely burnt, disfigured, and he's smiling in the seat right behind her, so right behind her driver's seat, and he was just sitting up straight and smiling in the mirror at her. She said that she screamed and immediately went to turn around and look back again. Nothing there. Looked, when she turned back around at the mirror in the center, no one was in the back seat anymore. She said it was so chilling that she went through the light and immediately pulled over. Apparently she just got out of her car and fair reaction, started screaming and freaking out, and she had to call her sister because she knew her sister was having a sleepover, I guess, like some of her friends. And she told her sister, I need you to come get me, or someone has to drive in my car with me. Like, I can't drive by myself. I know you're with your friends. I need help. Now, she told me that was thankfully for her, one-time kind of experience. Like, nothing, she doesn't think followed her into her house or anything like that. However, she did tell me she does get flashbacks, and she doesn't know if it's the trauma or if it is real. Sometimes at night when she's locking her car years later, she'll turn around, check it's locked, and like everything's working right, and she'll see a silhouette of someone sitting in her back seat right where that one entity was. This one really freaked me out. And sorry, by the way, you guys, I have a speech impediment, so I've talked about it here before. If I ever trip over my words or I don't make much sense, that's why. But I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. That's all for now. Bye.
So I listened to the story in Spanish over the weekend, and I've been catching myself thinking about this fucking story ever since. I've been racking my brain thinking about it and just like trying to make sense of what happened, and I cannot. So I want to share it with you because I need to know, what are your thoughts on this? Sit back, relax, and maybe grab a snack and hide your feet under the blanket. Actually, you're not safe there either. Not after this story, you're not safe. So this story takes place back in the early 2000s when Miguel was just a kid and he lived alone with his mom, and the house was just like a one-story home. They moved to this house when his parents separated, and he didn't have any siblings, so again, it was just him and his mom. Miguel describes his mom as a really hardworking woman. She was always tired, but he says that she always made it a point to spend quality time with him. She would always make him dinner, they would always watch movies together, and Miguel says that his mom was such a good and nice mom, until the nighttime came, that is. Now, the way he explains this is, it's not like she became a bad mom or like beat him or anything like that. He said that things would just get really weird. The very first time that Miguel found this weird thing happening was when he was around 6 or 7 years old. Just because this is the first time he experienced it doesn't mean that she hadn't been doing this before he found out. So when Miguel discovered this weird thing happening, the night was normal. His mom had taken him into bed. She tucked him in just like every other night. His mom turned the lights off, and then he heard a weird sound on the floor. And it's not the sound of his mom walking out into the hallway. It was a distinct sound that his floor made right next to his bed. Well, Miguel stayed frozen because obviously he knew that sound because he would go into bed every night. He would hear that weird sound from his floor. So he stayed very still and in shock. And that is when he started to hear somebody breathing very heavy. And that breathing was coming from underneath his bed. Miguel knew it was his mom. He never heard her leave the bedroom. But before this, he had never paid attention. Like after his mom tucked him in, he just went to bed. He didn't think about it. So he knew that his mom was the one breathing hard underneath his bed. And he wasn't scared. He thought it was really weird. So he just kind of peeked down there and he says, "Mom?" Now, his mom didn't give him a response, but he heard when she started giggling underneath the bed. Now, the giggle wasn't like, "Oh, you caught me," like I'm playing hide and seek or I'm joking around with him. No, it was just like a giggle that he thought was really fucking weird, but she didn't necessarily give him a response. After hearing her giggle and not come out like, "Ah, you caught me underneath your bed," Miguel felt a little scared, obviously. So he's like, "Maybe she didn't hear me. Let me say it louder." And he's like, "Mom." And that's when she dragged herself out from underneath his bed and says, "Oh, Miguel, it's okay. I'm just underneath here. Like, don't worry about it. Go to sleep." The way I wouldn't be able to go to sleep. Like, what do you mean you dragged yourself out? Normal, like if this is an everyday occurrence, and tells Miguel, "Don't worry. Go to sleep. I'm just down here." What? Now, Miguel didn't even have time to be like, "What are you doing under my bed?" He was so fucking confused. And yeah, he didn't get a chance to ask her anything because after that, she literally stands up, walks out of his room, closes the door without even giving Miguel an explanation of what the fuck you were doing under the bed. Now, the following night, this happens again. And this time, Miguel was like paying attention to what his mom was doing. He sees when his mom turns off the light, he hears that creaking right next to his bed. And now he can hear when his mom's knees are on the ground as she's trying to go underneath his bed. He could even feel his mattress move a little bit as his mom was trying to get like comfortable underneath his bed. You know, after she gets comfortable, complete silence. After a bit, the only thing he was able to hear was how his mom was breathing underneath the bed. Because again, he was 6 and 7 years old, he couldn't come to a conclusion as to if this was normal parent behavior or not. Like, do all parents do this? Do they not do this? So he didn't know what to make about it. As time went on, Miguel was starting to suspect that his mom was not playing with him. Like, this wasn't a joke. He knew that this was something different. This has now become a routine every single night without skipping a beat. And obviously Miguel had just figured that out. Who knows how long she had been doing that for before he discovered it. Again, this started when he was 6 or 7. Now we're going into ages 8 and 9. And that is when he discovered that this wasn't the only strange thing that was happening with his mom. He now started to notice that his mom would do things while she was underneath that bed. He explains them as she would be knocking on the base of his bed. At first, it would be 3 knocks and then silence. And then she would go up to 4 knocks and then silence again. He thinks that his mom knew that he was awake this entire time listening to her because anytime he would move, she would stay silent and stop doing everything that she would do. And then after a little bit, she would start it over again. Just because this has been going on for years, Miguel doesn't want you to think that it was normal for him. He had no questions. No, he was terrified. And because he was terrified, he would never ask his mom why she would do this every night during the daytime. He was terrified at this point. He also says, oh, this is what gives me the chills so bad. So he had trouble sleeping, obviously, because his mom was underneath the bed knocking, doing these weird things. He says that there would be moments where he would see his mom come out from underneath the bed, half of her face, just to look at him and then go right back underneath the bed. Bro, this is scarier than a fucking horror movie. He explains that there were moments where he had to pretend to be asleep, obviously, and that she would peek out again, just half of her face, looking at him, and that she would stay there for a good minute. He explains that her facial expression wasn't oh, look at my son sleep. No, she had nothing. No facial expression, just staring at him, not smiling, not angry. It was just so fucking weird. As you can imagine, by this point, he would have a really hard time going to sleep at night. He always wanted to just run out of there, but the first couple of times that he tried to do that, his mom would grab him by his ankles from underneath the bed. Now, he says she wasn't grabbing him to harm him. It was just a touch to stop him from getting out of bed. Baby, that touch would have been enough for me. I'd be so scared. What the fuck? I would pee myself. I would pee the bed, let the pee... Why am I so crazy? What the fuck? After his mom would successfully stop him from getting out of bed, he said that he would give up and lay down. And that's when he would hear again that little giggle that his mom would do. And again, it wasn't like playing around. It wasn't like she's like, you got me. She would just giggle. Like, I can't even imagine that. I'm like freaking out just thinking about that. Miguel also didn't tell anybody because he's like, who am I gonna tell? Who is gonna believe me that my mom is doing this? And he says that not every night was super scary. Obviously, it was scary because his mom was underneath the bed, but she wouldn't like laugh or do those hits every night. But yeah, she would be underneath his bed every night, and he has no idea who to even tell about this. He says that there was some nights where his mom would start whispering things. It was such a low whisper that he couldn't make out what she was saying. At first, he thought that maybe she was singing a song underneath the bed, but then he realized that it wasn't her singing. It sounded like she was talking to somebody. By this point, it's been years, and he says that you may be thinking like your mom must have done some weird shit during the day, but no. He said it was the complete opposite. She was such a nice mom. She was hardworking. She would spend time with me. It was only when nighttime came where she would do this. Obviously, he wasn't asking her why she was doing this because again, he said he was scared, but he also says that his mom would act so normal during the day, almost like if she wasn't doing this at nighttime. Like she would just act like her normal self. So time has passed and he was around 11 years old, and it was during the day where he had been spending all day with his mom. They went out and had fun, and that is when he felt, okay, I'm comfortable, we're having such a good time, I want to ask her why she does this at nighttime. He says that they had just gotten home, that he was doing his homework, and that she was hugging him at that point, so he felt very safe. And he turns to her and he's like, hey, why do you sleep underneath my bed? He explains how his mom stopped hugging him altogether. She turned to look at him and says, Miguel, what are you talking about? I don't sleep under your bed every night. Are you sure you're not having bad dreams? I would have died at that moment. I would have died. What the fuck do you mean you're not underneath my bed every night? He didn't push the topic, but that same night it happened again. But this time he says that those like little hits that she would do were a lot stronger, were a lot harder. By this point he is freaked out and he's like, I don't have to put up with it. So he came up with a plan and he's like, I'm going to try to fall asleep on the couch at nighttime when he's watching TV so that he is no longer sleeping in his bedroom. He also knew that his mom wouldn't grab him and put him into bed because at this point he was too heavy for her to do that, so he thought that was the perfect plan. It actually worked. Every other night that he could, he would pretend to fall asleep on the couch, ends up falling asleep. His mom couldn't carry him, so he would go to bed without dealing with the mom being underneath the bed every night, and it actually worked out. Now, by this point, Miguel had just turned 12 years old, and he says that his mom out of nowhere looks at him and says, hey Miguel, you're 12 years old, and I think you're old enough to be able to lock your door when you go to bed. That was the very last time that his mom had slept underneath his bed after she tells him, hey, you know, you could lock your door every night. Why would she say that though? Like, this is why I'm telling you that I have been thinking about this story, because it's like she denies sleeping under the bed. He turns 12 and then she's like, hey, aren't you old enough to be able to lock your door at night? Like, what the fuck? Like, it's like a threat, but not really. But like, maybe save yourself from me? Lock your door from me? Like, I'm not crazy. Like, is this making you guys think what the fuck? Also, just wait for the ending too. It's not over. Obviously, Miguel has no idea what changed, what happened, why she tells her, hey, you go lock your door. He doesn't know. He's still confused and he's 12. So Miguel grew up, he became an adult, and when he was about 23 years old, his mom actually got very sick. The sickness was at a very advanced stage, so sometimes his mom would be like not all there. She was lucid, she wasn't, and it was just like, you know, she was going through it. It even got to a point at some of those times that she couldn't even speak anymore. Even though he was already an adult, he didn't have the heart to ask his mom what happened, like all those years, you know, before age 12 where she would sleep underneath his bed. So in one of those final days that he had with his mom, she was in like a lucid stage, and he explains that she grabs his hand and tells him, you know, I kept you safe for so long. You were never alone at nighttime. After this, his mom just ends up passing away. Till this day, Miguel has no idea why his mom would do that. He has no idea what his mom meant when she said that to him. He doesn't know what happened, and obviously he's never gonna get answers because his mom did, you know, pass away. He's almost thinking like, did something happen in the house that I had no idea? Like, why did she say that? Why did she say that she kept me safe and that she was always with me at nighttime? I honestly am racking my brain thinking of why the mom would do this, because at some point I started thinking like, well, you know, she had just just gotten a divorce? What if the dad was coming over trying to take him at nighttime and that's why she would stay there? But that doesn't explain the weird behavior she was having underneath the bed. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe she was going through like something mental. Sometimes when people go through something as traumatic as a divorce and you're trying to keep your child safe, maybe like you do have mental issues, but she was acting so normal during the day that I don't know. I need to hear what you guys have to say about this.
Okay guys, buckle up, sit down, and let's go for a ride. I read this story a really long time ago and it just like shook me. Like it did something to me. So the story starts off with Kevin. He was the outdoorsy type of person, you know, basically the type of person who could disappear into the woods for a couple of days and then come back happier than ever. Basically nature was his thing. It was like his calming, his peace. But then his life started to fall apart around him. Within a matter of weeks, he lost his girlfriend, lost his job, lost his apartment, and had to move back in with his parents. According to his sister, who is the OP of this story, it was almost like watching somebody like who's alive but disappearing right in front of your eyes. Then one night she found him sitting alone at the kitchen table around 2 o'clock in the morning, just kind of picking at a cold slice of pizza. And so being the sister, she was like, you know, what's up? What's the problem? Are you okay? And basically he told her like, no, I'm not doing well, and I think I'm going to go out into the woods again. Like I'm gonna go on like this soul-searching journey out in the forest. Not just any forest, the Appalachian Mountains. Basically, he wanted to just go away for a while, to go hiking, camping, to find himself again. The very next morning, he announces to everybody, including his parents this time, that he is going to be going along the Appalachian Trail for a few months. Now, at first, their mom hated the idea. She was like, hell no, not my son. But he was very experienced in these things. Like I said, he was the outdoorsy type, the type of person who was in the woods all the time. Therefore, that eased her thoughts a little bit, and she kind of just, you know, let him go with no problems. A few weeks later, he boarded his plane to Georgia and began his hike. First, everything seemed normal. He was texting his family, which was their request. You can go on this trip so long as you update us every single day that you are alive and well. So once he first started the trail, like right on the head, he texted them, sent them a picture of the trailhead and said, my journey begins here, like I'm headed out. So every day that became his routine. He would send a picture. He would sometimes say like, you know, this is my proof of life. I'm alive, you guys, here I am. But the everyday routine slowly became a once a week routine, which at first scared the hell out of everybody. They even contacted the police, but the police were not really able to do anything because the forest, the mountain range is so vast. Like, and he didn't really give anybody a pinpoint on where he was going. He just said he was going to the AT, going to hike apart like a portion of it. There was really nothing that the police could do. Then one day after the police had done their little mini investigation or whatever they could do for the family, a text arrived. It was just a photograph of the sunset, and underneath it said, everything is fine here. His family was super relieved, but his sister wasn't, because through the panic, she had been like looking through every single previous picture that he had been sending the family through his through his proof of life updates. And what she noticed was very weird. So in every single picture, up until the point where he started to go rogue for a couple days until the end of the week, in every single picture, there was like a dark mass, like a dark figure standing somewhere within the picture. It wasn't necessarily visible right upon looking at it, but she did happen to notice that stopped as soon as he started texting again at the end of the week after going rogue for a while, which she thought was really weird. Whatever, a few weeks go by after this incident, okay, and they don't hear from Kevin again until a couple weeks later around 2 o'clock in the morning when they heard their doorbell ring, and the mom answered it, and it was Kevin, who looked absolutely not like Kevin. He had lost a significant amount of weight, about 35 pounds, and he was already a skinny guy before going out to hike. So he was rail thin. He looked horrible. His lips were cracked, his gums were covered in dried blood, and the smell of him was like smelling a pile of dead animals. At first, his family just thought, okay, he's suffering the effects of being out isolated in the wilderness for that long. Over time, his behavior just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Like, he was just not talkative. He barely spoke, and when he did, his voice just sounded wrong. But at first, like, his family just kind of chalked that up to like, okay, maybe he just didn't speak to himself the entire time he was out, you know,
if you don't talk, your voice can start to sound funny when you do start talking after a long period of not talking. But it was weird because his voice almost sounded like it was two voices talking at once, you know? Some kind of tone underneath his own tone, but it was very subtle. Then there was his eating. So his mom prepared him this like big banquet breakfast of like eggs, bacon, sausage, bread, and he ate so much food, like in an animalistic kind of way as well. He just kept demanding more and more and more and more and more, like an absurd amount of food. According to the OP, he ate about a dozen eggs, 3 full packs of bacon, and ate an entire loaf of bread before finally stopping, but yet he still looked like he was starved. That night is when things started to change even worse. The OP woke up to a sound, and she ended up looking outside her window and noticed that her brother was crawling around in the yard. Not just crawling around, like he was on all fours, like kind of tweaking and twitching and like jerking around. So she thought that he was having a seizure, so she ran out to aid him. But when she got out there, she noticed that what he was doing was not at all having a seizure, but instead he was face deep in a dead cat. In a dead cat carcass, like one that had been sitting out, probably out there for days and days. It was bloated, it smelled like rancid. She ran back into the house, and as she was running, she started to remember the smell that she smelled when he first got back. And it was that same exact rancid smell. So she decided, as she was running down the hallway back to her own room, she decided to pop into his room. And on his bed was like this big lump under the blanket, and first of all, the second she stepped in there, it smelled rancid immediately. And then she noticed the big lump underneath the blanket on his bed, and she went under to investigate. Tell me why she found, oh my God, tell me why she found freaking dead bunnies, mice, cats, other little tiny animals. So as she tries to turn to leave like anybody would, she ends up seeing Kevin standing directly outside of the kitchen window, staring directly at her. He was covered in like chunks and blood from the cat he was eating, and his head was turned and tilted at a really odd angle. As she was staring back at him, he ended up trying to lunge at her through the kitchen window. It didn't work the first time. He kept trying to get in, and then they ended up calling the police. Before the police could get there, he ended up stopping trying to get back in, looked around frantically, and took off into the forest. And to this day, they don't know where Kevin is. They've never been able to find Kevin. But the sister knew from day one of him coming back that her brother never actually came back. Whatever was in those photos, whatever she had seen in those photos, had hunted down her brother and taken him. The Appalachian Mountains are nothing to mess around with. They are literally older than Saturn's rings, one of the oldest mountain ranges on this planet. It was part of Pangea when Pangea was a thing. As I always say, I think you're very foolish to not believe in stories like these, because the legends of this place are not just legends.
I'm from a very small village in South Wales. I want to share a story about my family home. To give a bit of context, my parents bought this house back in the mid-70s from an elderly woman, the house in which her boys had grown up and her husband had died a few years earlier. This house is a type of townhouse where the kitchen, bathroom and small living room are downstairs under the main road. Now, over the many years, many weird things have happened to everyone who's lived in the house, i.e. my parents, brother and my sister and I. To set the scene, the previous owner, Frank, died in what is now my parents' bedroom, and that's where most of the weird stuff takes place. Except when we are having work done on the house, he makes himself known to let us know he's not happy. For example, he whispers "boo" into my mother's ear. He did this early one morning as she was hoovering the floorboards ready for new carpet to be laid. My sister and I still to this day don't like going upstairs and always feel someone is watching us from the top of the stairs as we walk through the front door. But in this one instance, my sister had moved out and my parents had gone away for the weekend. I must have been 16 and my sister was 20. Due to me being petrified to stay home alone, I made a stay over so that I wouldn't be on my own. We both went to sleep in my bedroom, nothing amiss. It was around 3 a.m. when we both woke up startled to our parents' bedroom door, which was completely closed, rattling like something was shaking it off its hinges.
Oh, no.
Although I'm usually brave, my sister being the eldest tried to calm me down and said that it's probably just a draft. My sister nervously got out of bed, tiptoed across the landing to our parents' bedroom, and the rattling of the door had stopped. She went over, touched the door, and felt that it was shut, and after several minutes of it being dead quiet, got back into bed. We chatted about how weird this was and how Frank was at it again. It always happens when we're alone. Probably 10 minutes went by and it was silent, and we gradually fell back to sleep. Then, without warning, the door started rattling even harder. My sister and I looked at each other, panic in our eyes. Again, my sister got out of bed and went to the landing. There was an old box from some furniture we'd had which had polystyrene in it, so she broke off a piece and wedged the door shut. At this point,
I'm just imagining that sound.
Yeah. At this point, I got out of bed and was chatting to her as she did this, and we both tested the door and it was shut with no movement at all. We even tried to rattle it ourselves and it made no movement. Phew, we both said, trying to rationalise that because everyone's like, it's wind or a draft. When has a wind or draft ever rattled a door that hard?
Yeah.
We both got back into bed, and literally before we even laid down, the door started rattling louder and harder than before. Surely the wind couldn't be doing this when the windows are shut. My sister jumped out of bed, flew open the door, and stood halfway on the landing and watched the door still rattling. She shouted out loud with her anger rising, "If you don't stop this right now and let us go back to sleep, Frank, believe me when I say I will call up someone in the morning and get you out of this house." Instantly, the door stopped rattling. The heaviness we were feeling just disappeared, and we were able to get back to sleep and had no other issues that night. This is just one story that has convinced both my sister and I that Frank or other ghostly inhabitants of our house come to visit every now and again and let us know that they are still here and want themselves to be known. Although a few things have happened to my parents, they love their house dearly and don't ever plan on leaving. From what our neighbours have told us about Frank, he was a nice man. Over the years, we tell each other different stories of our experiences, but it's always when work is being done. That'd be a little bit of decorating or more bigger DIY. Frank likes to inform us he's not happy that we are changing his house.
Oh, interesting.
I hope the story makes its way onto the pod, and yes, it has. Love what you do, Huns, and if you ever want a scary outing, the Skirrid Inn is a must.
Skirrid, I've heard of that.
Have you? I've never heard of it.
Skirrid.
Oh, then Wales, Skirrid.
Is it, though? I don't know why I
Well,
said
the way
it like...
you said it.
It's the way I said it.
It's the way you said it. Where is it? It's in Abergavenny.
Oh,
It is Welsh.
There was two 9-year-old little girls named Amy and Amanda. They were best friends, like sisters, and they were next door neighbors. They had been outside playing with the neighborhood kids all day, and it was just about dark. The streetlights were coming on. Amy said, "I gotta go," and then she ran in her house, and Amanda went in hers. The next morning, Amanda woke up to pure chaos. She can hear people screaming and crying outside her house, and she sees blue and red lights flashing through the window. Amanda jumps out of bed and runs downstairs and finds her parents standing at the front door talking to police officers. Amanda's mama told the police officer, "Well, there she is right there. Come here, Amanda. The police officer just wants to ask you some questions." And the police officer squatted down and said, "Honey, when was the last time you saw your friend Amy?" Amanda said, "Yesterday, right before we came in, when the streetlights came on." The officer said, "Did you see her walk into the house?" Amanda said, "Yeah, she went in before I did." Amanda said, "Daddy, what happened to Amy? Is she not at home?" Amanda's daddy said, "Baby, we don't know what's going on, but we will find her." The next week, this town searches high and low for this child, but no matter where they looked, they could not find any sign of Amy. It was like she just disappeared. It's the 6th day of Amy being missing. Amanda is laying in her bed. Amanda rolls over and looks at the window, and that's where she sees Amy. Amanda jumps up like, "Amy, is that you? Where have you been? Everyone's been searching for you." She starts yelling out for her parents, and then Amy takes off running. So she tells her parents what happened. They call the police. Of course, when the police get there, they search around the house. They search Amy's house, still cannot find her. The next night, Amanda wakes up. She looks over at the window, and again, she sees Amy looking back at her. Amanda jumps up and runs to the window, but Amy ducks down like she's scared. Amanda couldn't open the window because it was locked. So Amanda grabs her shoes, runs outside, and by the time she gets out there, Amy's gone. Amanda's parents wake up and realize she's got the front door standing wide open. They said, "What are you doing? Get your butt back in this house." Amanda said, "I just saw Amy. She was at my window. I came out to look for her, but she's gone." Amanda's daddy said, "Why didn't you tell me? You should have called to us." Again the next night, Amanda wakes up and sees Amy at her window. She yells out for her parents, but by the time they get in the room, Amy's gone. When the police come out this time, they tell Amanda's parents, "Look, we think your daughter may be acting out for attention. Like, we think she's making this up." Her mom and dad were like, "No, she wouldn't do that." And the police officer said, "Look, it's normal. When a child goes through trauma like this, they seek attention. So next time, unless you got real evidence, don't call us." When they left, Amanda's daddy said, "Look, honey, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you see Amy or are you lying?" Amanda said, "Daddy, I promise you, you know I wouldn't lie about something like this. She was at the window." About a month goes by. Amanda's laying in bed when all of a sudden she hears, "Amanda." She said, "Amy, is that you?" Amy said, "Yeah, come outside and play with me." Amanda said, where are you? Amy said, I've been with my friend Mr. John. He lets me do whatever I want. I eat cake and candy and potato chips, no chores, no rules. You should come be with us. We can have so much fun together. Amanda said, I can't do that and you need to come home. Amy said, I'm leaving for good, but I want to see you one last time. Meet me at your window and don't tell your parents. Amanda said, what's wrong with your voice? You don't sound right. Amy said, I've been sick. It's fine. Just meet me at the window. A few seconds go by and then Amanda sees Amy at the window, but Amy doesn't look right. When she spoke, her mouth was not moving the way it should. It was tighter and it would open and close like a ventriloquist doll. And there were flies everywhere on Amy's face, flying around her head and all over the window. Amanda said, Amy, why do you look like that? What's wrong with you? Amy said, I've been really sick. I need you to come take care of me. But first, I want you to meet my good friend, Mr. John. We've been playing together. And that's when this creepy looking man popped up at the window right beside Amy. Mr. John said, don't you want to come play with us? All you have to do is unlock the window and let us in. So Amanda unlocked the window and Mr. John slowly pushed it open. He said, we have to be real quiet so we don't wake your parents up. And Amy pops her head in the window and says, come on, Amanda, we're going to have so much fun. So Amanda starts walking towards Amy, but the closer she got, the worse Amy looked. Amy's face was sunken in. Her eyes were milky white. She had no teeth. Her nose was hanging off. Her skin had turned purple, was bloated and hanging off her face. There were maggots on Amy's face crawling out of her nose into her mouth, and she wasn't moving. Amanda said, Amy, there are bugs crawling on your face. Do something. What's wrong with you? But Amy just stood there with her mouth gaped open like a statue. And before Amanda knew it, this tall man climbed into her window, grabbed her by the hair and said, you're coming with me, and tried to push her out the window. Amanda's screaming at this point, yelling for her parents, Amy, anyone, help her. All of a sudden, the bedroom door busts open, the light cuts on. It's Amanda's daddy. He's holding a rifle. Amanda pointed at the window and said, see, Daddy, I told you, there's Amy right there. She's been coming to see me. And when her daddy looked at Amy, he said, Amanda, get out of this room right now, go. Amanda stood out in the hallway and listened to her parents cry and throw up as her brother called the police. Trigger warning. This man was a dangerous child predator who had just gotten out of prison. He had a long history of kidnapping and R-wording children. He said as soon as he saw Amanda and Amy walking down the street hand in hand, he had to have them. So first he kidnapped Amy, he beat her, and then tried to force her to help him lure out Amanda, but she said, that's my best friend, you can't have her. He said no matter how much he beat her, she would not help him, and what a brave little girl to sacrifice herself for her friend like that. So because Amy would not help him, he murdered her, decapitated her, and then put her head on a stick. He would hold her head up on a stick outside the window, talking in a little girl's voice, trying to lure Amanda out. And that's why it looked like she was standing at the window. The police arrived, they arrest him, and in his interview, he claims he has other victims but does not disclose who they are. He said that Amy's last words were begging him to please not hurt Amanda, that she loved and missed Amanda and just wanted to go home and play with her best friend again. But he didn't make it to his next court date because the guards put him in a cell with other inmates and they tortured him to death. This happened decades ago, but Amanda named her first child after Amy, and many of her grandchildren did the same. There's a lot of Amy's in that family.
The person that sent me the story called it paranormal Hatman entity with red glowing eyes. Woo, a Hatman story. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi, into Matrix. Hi. When I was around 9 to 10, I had my parents' room decorated for me, and my parents moved into my grandma's room, who by that time had passed away. I'm so sorry. My grandpa had passed away even before my parents met. They redecorated that room too. They had a mirror on the wardrobe facing their bed. Never a good idea, my friends. And another one on top of the chest of drawers facing the bed from the side. Oh my God. You are just asking for trouble. I always felt creeped out and being watched in that room. Did I mention the 2 porcelain dolls that I got as gifts and stayed in a shelf in my parents' room? Creepy. Yeah, no thanks to the porcelain dolls. So my grandma's room has a wooden bed, a wardrobe, and a set of drawers with a mirror also facing the bed. Cool. They were a set. The mirror had a middle part and 2 flaps that open like a window would. My bed, my chest of drawers, and mirror were made from my old grandparents' bedroom set. The mirror was part of that mirror, but my parents had a friend who carved a wooden frame for it. It was a very old mirror, so whenever one of my friends came, they would play with it because if you stand from afar, it would elongate or smash your face. So kind of like a funhouse mirror, I guess. The mirror was put parallel with my bed. Cool. Oh my God. This is way too many mirrors. Can I just please stop and remind you, please don't have mirrors facing your fucking bed? Mirrors are portals, especially if you have multiple ones facing each other. Not a good look. Not a good look. Unless you lock them. Lock them, cover them, that's cool. I should mention that in the hallway of the house, we had a floor-length wooden carved mirror that used to be in my grandpa's tailor shop. I was born in 1990, so by the time I was 12 to 15 years old, we still had no internet. I'm a night owl, so I would be awake until midnight, which is late for a kid back then. The bathroom was next to my room, and I would always get up to go to the toilet. No big deal, right? Wrong. Whenever I would get up to go to the toilet, since I couldn't fall back asleep with the light on, I would have to get up, pass by the mirror, and then go to the toilet, and then the same thing on my way back in the dark. I could see my own shadow in it, and it gave me the creeps for some reason. Yes, understandably. Sometimes while laying in the bed, I would hear the switch for the bathroom light be pressed, but heard no one open the door and go to the toilet. It would make my skin crawl. So about 16 to 18, I saw the Hat Man. If you don't know, the Hat Man is the most famous sleep paralysis demon in the entire world. He is giant. He is blacker than black, shadow figure, red eyes, hat. Never does anything bad, just watches. I had an armchair across my bed in the corner, and sometimes I could see him sitting on it in the darkness. Mind you, by then the internet was starting to be a thing, but it was just chat rooms and nobody was talking about anything paranormal, so I've never heard about the Hat Man before. I remember seeing him sitting in the armchair watching me. He never did anything, but I was so scared every time I saw him. My family doesn't really believe in ghosts, so I never told them. I couldn't tell friends either because they would think I'm crazy. I know you'd think sleep paralysis, but I was awake, not fallen asleep yet, and I could move even though the blood in my veins was freezing in fear. That's how I learned sleeping with the covers above my head. After a while, I saw something else. Oh my God, what did you see? Well, I can't exactly say saw. So basically, when I was seeing the Hat Man, my eyes were wide open, but with this creature, it was different. I would feel an energy and then try to convince myself that everything was okay, but when I closed my eyes, I would see, with my eyes closed, a tall, black figure with round, red, glowing eyes staring at me. It would have its arms behind its back, bent over my bed. Picture an alien, but black instead of green and with red glowing eyes. But how in the world I would see it only with my eyes closed? Still not sleep paralysis since I was awake and I could move, because I know I would put the covers over my head for safety, which I still don't understand the logic behind hiding underneath the covers and how they're supposed to protect me, but I did it. It just makes you feel better. That creature never moved from that position either. I don't know why they appeared, nor how or why they disappeared. A few years later, at the time I was 20 or 21, I had a boyfriend, and his grandpa died. Out of respect, I had to go to his house and pay my respects, but I did inform him that I'm terrified of corpses and I might collapse. He said he's in the living room, but covered with a white sheet. I'm Christian Orthodox, and by that time, when a person dies, some people would call and the person who died would be taken to the morgue until burial, but some would have the person who died in their house throughout the night with the family, and in the morning, friends and relatives would come to pay respects. I did not even know that that was a thing. I don't know if I would want to do that. Oh, did I mention they uncover the dead person in the morning? No, you did not. As soon as they did, I was so scared. My face started changing colors, so my boyfriend ushered me into the kitchen to make coffee. One thing that stuck out to me in the moment I entered the hallway of their house was that the mirror was covered. Yes. I've never seen that before, so I asked, why is the mirror covered? The boyfriend then informed me that when somebody dies, all the mirrors in the house are being covered so that the soul of the dead person doesn't stay bound to the house and move on. I haven't actually heard of that either. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that, and I was wondering if it was done in my house when my grandparents died. Since, as I said, there was a giant-ass mirror from my deceased grandfather's tailor shop when my grandma died. I asked my mom, but she doesn't remember, and I wasn't in the house since I was 8 years old. So a year or two after, it was summer and my parents were on vacation, so I was the only one home. The windows in the house were open to let the air in, and I was getting ready to go out. I went into the kitchen to wash my hands, and all of a sudden, I hear what sounds as people having sex. What? But what was weird is that it sounded like it was one of those old metal beds with metal springs beneath the mattress, because I heard the metal springs making noise in the rhythm of the two people having sex. This is weird. The thing is, we didn't have a bed like that. Not even my grandparents did in their time, and not even the neighbors who we shared a wall with. I shut my eyes, closed, and in my head I screamed for it to stop as I was scared and alone and at home. I did it for a few seconds and then it continued. Panicked, I screamed, "Stop!" and run through the house, closing the windows, locking the house, and went out with my friends. Years later now, I live in an apartment on the same spot where my house was. You mean like in the same town or the same little area? Or do you mean like literally your house was like torn down and there's like an apartment complex where your house was? I'm not sure, but that's okay. I don't think it really matters. We get the gist. It was my first new year here and I was washing a plate with Christmas trees and gold rim. Very cheap, but I liked it a lot and I bought the last one so I couldn't buy another. So I'm washing it after I had cookies in it and it was as if something pulled it off of my hand, as if snatching it from me, and it fell in the sink and broke. As I said, I'm a night owl, and at night I would feel an eerie energy from the toilet, which is always open and you can see from the living room. I never saw anything, thank fuck for that, but for some reason I like to know in my head, I don't know how, but I do, it's a shadow of a tall, slim woman. So whenever I feel being watched, I go, nope, you are not welcome here. This is my home. Get out of my home. Other than that, I often fall asleep in the living room, and I always wake up at 3:15 a.m. and go to sleep in the bedroom. One of those times when I woke up, I heard the crinkling of a plastic bag I had in the kitchen, and then turned around, still sleepy, and my freaking Monstera plant waves a leaf at me. I froze. I waited for a bug to fly away since my balcony door was open, but I found no bug. The last thing was that I told my parents when they come to knock at the door instead of ringing the bell because it's so loud it scares the life out of me. They do knock instead of ringing the bell. However, at night, I would watch YouTube in my living room and hear a knock at my door. And then nothing. At first, it was a really quiet knock, but tonight it was louder and then nothing. I never answered as I know that it's not my parents. The end. Oh my gosh. Okay, that was like a smorgasbord of things. Clearly, things were coming in and out of the house through these portals, right? Like, clearly. The Hat Man is a normal thing to see. It's normally a sleep paralysis demon, but does not have to be. You can see him when you're not in sleep paralysis as well. The people having sex noises and the bed noises, I literally have no idea what that could be. I have no idea. Does anyone have any idea about that? And the plant waving at you? I feel like this is so many weird things at once. Do you still have mirrors in the house? Do you still have those old mirrors, or do you have mirrors? Do you lock your mirrors? Do you cover your mirrors? Like, maybe you just have a bunch of shit coming in. Maybe you're attracting shit. I honestly don't know. But this was really scary and weird, and I hope you're good, and I love you, and thank you for sharing, and let me know what you guys think in the comments.
What if you found 2 old tapes in your dead grandfather's house and one of them was labeled "She's Lying"? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a woman, a hatchet, and a house that learned voices. After my grandfather died, my mom, my aunt, and I had to clean out his house. It was this old 2-story place out in Missouri where he had lived alone for years after my grandmother died. A few days after the funeral, I was up in the attic going through boxes when I found 2 old VHS tapes in a plastic bin under a bunch of old junk. One was plain and the other had "She's Lying" written across the front in black marker. That was weird enough that I brought them home instead of throwing them away. A friend let me borrow an old VCR, and a couple days later I went back to my grandfather's house alone to watch them. I played the plain tape first. It started with static and then settled on footage from inside the house at night. The upstairs hallway. The camera was handheld, shaking a little, and I could hear a woman breathing behind it. And then she whispered, "Please stop following me." The camera turned too fast, it caught the hallway again, and there was a woman standing at the far end with a hatchet in one hand. She had long dark hair and bare feet in a pale nightgown. The camera shook like the person filming stumbled. And then the woman with the hatchet said, "I told you not to listen to it." And the tape cut to static. At first I thought maybe it was staged, some weird old home project, and then I played the second tape, the one that said "She's Lying." This one opened on a fixed shot of the kitchen at night. It was the same house, and the same night, I think. A few seconds in, the same woman walked into frame. No hatchet yet. She was checking the back door, looking into the hallway, and clearly scared of something. And then behind her in the dining room doorway, something moved. Not clearly enough to make out a face, just a darker shape crossing where nothing should have been. She spun around so fast she nearly slipped, and backed out of the frame, and the tape jumped. Next clip, it was the living room, and this time she had the hatchet, and she was crying. Not loud, but just standing there near the stairs with tears on her face, gripping the handle and looking up toward the second floor. And then she said, "You're making it sound like me." And from upstairs through all the tape hiss came her own voice saying, "Come up here." That was when I stopped thinking of any of it as fake. The tape jumped again, and this time it was the upstairs hallway. Same window at the end, and the same strip of moonlight. Only now the camera wasn't being carried. It was set low somewhere off to the side, aimed down the hall. And the hallway stayed empty for a few seconds. And then the woman entered from the left with the hatchet. She moved slowly, checking each doorway as she passed, and then she stopped. And from somewhere behind the camera, or maybe one of the other rooms, her own voice said softly, "You're recording the wrong one." She turned towards the sound, and that was when I saw her face clearly for the first time. It was my grandmother, young but unmistakably her. And then it got worse. She was standing at the end of the hallway in the strip of moonlight coming through the window, so the camera caught her body mostly in the shadow, and the hatchet hanging low in one hand, and enough light on her face to show that her eyes were completely black. And she was smiling. And then she noticed whoever was filming. She started sprinting towards the camera, fast enough that you expect her to burst fully into the frame. But instead, she disappeared into the pitch black part of the hallway before she reached it. And there was 1 second where the person filming was breathing hard, and the camera was shaking, and nothing was visible. And then she reappeared. Not running now. She was slowly tiptoeing towards the camera from the dark, still smiling. And then her body twitched sharply, wrong and sudden, and she jerked sideways back into the darkness again. And from out of that black, she said, "I'll wait for you out here." And then the tape cut off. I sat there staring at static for I don't know how long. And then I rewound both tapes and watched them again. And the more I watched them, the worse they got. Because the first tape makes it look like my grandmother is the threat. But the second tape makes it obvious that something else was in the house first. Something using her voice, or following her, or trying to make her look like the liar. And that night, I called my mom and asked if anything had ever happened in the house before I was born. And she got really quiet. And then she told me my grandmother used to say the house learned voices. That was her exact phrase. She said there were nights when Grandma swore she heard people calling from empty rooms, and sometimes my mom's voice, or my grandpa's. Once she said her own voice from upstairs while she was standing in the kitchen. And then my mom told me that one night when she was 14, my grandmother locked every bedroom door from outside and sat in the upstairs hallway until morning because she said something was in the house and had learned my mother's voice and was trying to get her to come out. I asked my mom why she never told me any of that, and she said because it sounded crazy. And then she asked if I was still in the house. I lied and said no, but I was. And right after that, I heard footsteps upstairs. Very light, but just enough. And then I heard my own voice from the second floor say, "Come up here." I dropped the phone and ran out of that house so fast I left the VCR on and the front door hanging open behind me. Later, after I digitized the tapes, I found something else hidden in the footage. In the first tape, there's a moment where you can see a second woman standing in one of the bedroom doorways. Not my grandmother, just a face and one shoulder in the dark, watching both of them. And in the second tape, right before my grandmother starts sprinting down that moonlit hallway, you can hear the first woman whisper near the camera, "She already sounds like me." I still don't know which woman wrote "she's lying" on the tape, and I still don't know which one my grandfather believed. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Right there. I'm a psychic medium, and today we're going to be rating haunted locations in South Wales based on one important question. Would I stay the night there? We are going to be rating this on 4 different categories. So, first one, fear factor. Second one, hauntedness. Third one, toilet trip at 3 a.m. And then fourth one, sleepability. Okay, so we're going with the first one, Skirrid Inn. Now the Skirrid Inn, I've been there a few times, I haven't actually slept there. So, I'm going to go with fear factor. Well, it's quite high. There's somewhere where they used to hang people. So I would say probably fear factor around a 9. Hauntedness, I'm going to go all the way to 10. Toilet trip at 3 a.m. Like 42 out of 10. Too scary for me. No, I would just dehydrate I would rather just never drink again. So sleepability for the Skirden is probably about a 1 out of 10, meaning that I probably would not sleep there. Craigenose. Now I have slept here numerous times. Fear factor, I'm gonna give it like a 3. Hauntedness, I'm gonna give it about an 8. Toilet trip at 3 a.m. Again, I'm not that bothered in this place. I would say like a 1 out of 10. Not that scary. Sleepability, 8 out of 10. I would definitely sleep in Craigenose Castle. Margam Castle, haven't slept here. Fear factor, I see I'm taking into account the staircase. So fear factor, I would say a good 7 out of 10. Hauntedness, 8 out of 10. Toilet trip at 3 in the morning, too many corridors, too big. 2 out of 10. And so overall, I think sleepability would be about a 4 out of 10. So no, I would not stay the night in Margam Castle. Because the thing is, if I need the toilet in the night, and I've got to go through like a ballroom, 17 corridors, and what feels like 3 dimensions of reality, I'm just going to wee myself. Carew Castle. I've had bad things happen to me in Carew Castle. Now, fear factor 10 out of 10. Hauntedness 10 out of 10. Toilet trip at 3 a.m. absolutely not happening. 0 to 10. Like it's not happening. Sleepability 0 to 10. I would not stay in Carew Castle if you paid me £1 million. The fact that there is allegedly a haunted ape, and nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about it. It's just like, oh yeah, the haunted ape. No. It's not happening. I would not stay there. Forget it.
My husband saw a man glitching like an NPC in real life on Y2K night. Then exactly a week later it happened again, and this time his friend saw it too. This submission to Spooky Scary Storytime came from Sadie, and she said that her husband just told her this story and it stopped her in her tracks because they were having a conversation about Y2K and what they were doing when the year 2000 hit. Sadie says, for context, her husband is very open-minded to unusual things, but he's absolutely not the type of person to make up or embellish stories. So if he says something happened, she believes that it happened. But what exactly happened is very much up for debate, and she says this is one of the most mystifying stories she's ever heard. So they were talking about New Year's Eve of 1999 and how so many people at the time believed that something catastrophic was going to happen, and how there were beliefs that the computers were going to reset and that planes would fall from the sky and society would collapse. If you were old enough to remember New Year's Eve going into the year 2000, you probably remember the panic, but instead midnight came and went and life resumed as normal. So they're talking about this, and Sadie says something jokingly like, I wonder if we have timelines that night. And her husband stops and he goes, oh my God, I haven't thought about this in years. And then he tells her this story. At the time, he was living in San Francisco and working in finance, and his apartment was at the top of Russian Hill, and so to get home, he had to climb a long set of stairs. And on the night of December 31st, 1999, going into the year 2000, he had been out and he had been drinking, but he was not incapable and he was perfectly fine walking home on his own. At the top of the hill, he noticed a man standing a little off in the distance, and the man was standing in a very strange position. It looked almost as if he had started to run, but that his arms had gotten frozen in place. But he wasn't standing completely still. The man's body was making strange repetitive movements, small jerks and twitches in exactly the same places. And the closest comparison that Sadie's husband could come up with was a non-playable character or an NPC in a video game that gets caught walking into a wall because something isn't working correctly. The movements were unnatural enough that Sadie's husband stopped walking and just stared, trying to figure out what was going on. But it didn't look like he was under the influence of substances, and it didn't look like a medical episode. It just looked scary and out of place and unnerving, and her husband told her that he stood in the same position making the small, strange, jerky, same exact movements for what was about 5 full minutes. Then suddenly the man stopped and he looked around like he was waking up from something, and he seemed confused for a moment before he walked off. Completely normal. And Sadie's husband said that he was very unsettled by it in the moment, but just convinced himself that it was something strange that you see in a city and never think about again. But then something even stranger happened, because exactly 1 week later from the date, Sadie's husband's friend came to visit, and he was staying with Sadie's husband, and they spent the night out in the town because her husband's friend had never been to San Francisco before. And as they're out at one bar having dinner, he tells him about the strange encounter that he had had a week prior. They spent a significant amount of time at dinner talking about what could have possibly happened to that man to make him behave in that way. They finished their meal, and her husband said that they hadn't really been drinking, maybe max 2 beers, if that, before heading back to the apartment, and they walked the same way, up the same stairs on Russian Hill, and as they reached the top, they both froze, because now standing in the distance was a different man. Different clothes, different appearance, different person, but he was doing the exact same thing. According to Sadie's husband, it was the identical movements of what he witnessed a week before. The man was frozen in position, making the same repetitive, jerky, twitchy movements, and his friend saw it too, and both of them stood there watching, and neither could explain what they were witnessing. And just like the first time, the behavior continued for several minutes before the man suddenly stopped, looked around, seemed confused as if coming out of a trance, and then walked away. Both Sadie's husband and his friend talked about it for a long time, trying to come up with a logical or rational explanation, and nothing made sense. And Sadie says what strikes her the most is that it happened twice, both in the same location, but a week apart. As he told her this story, he says, "I remember every detail of seeing these men both nights, and we could call my friend right now and he will corroborate my story. He will tell you the exact same thing." And the friend did, down to the last detail. And she says, of course, there is probably a rational explanation. Maybe it really was a medical episode. Maybe there's an environmental factor at play, or maybe it comes down to something that we just don't understand. But her husband says that what made it so unsettling for him was how closely it resembled what we describe as a video game glitch, and how quickly the person returned to normal afterward. The fact that it happened twice is what makes it hard to dismiss. And she says that they've joked about everything from things that aren't quite human to simulation theory, especially because it happened right after Y2K and on the top of a hill in a large city, but they truly have no idea what he saw. So she's curious if anyone else has ever witnessed seeing someone that they believed could have possibly been an NPC. Has anyone heard of a similar glitch in the Matrix, or can anyone offer up any rational explanations for what her husband and his friend witnessed that night? She would love to hear your thoughts, and though she didn't want to be tagged, she said she may respond to some comments.
This mermaid encounter was horrifying. Not all mermaids are friendly and nice. I am back with another spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Lucy. So 3 years ago, Lucy was visiting family near the coast of South Africa. Now it was later in the day and she decided to go by this river and just sightsee. She was taking in the environment, smoking a little something, literally feeling so chill. So as she's sitting there, she starts hearing what sounds like women singing. And it wasn't like normal singing either. It was like an echo. It sounded like 20 different voices harmonizing underwater. She says she's sitting there listening to it and she wants to leave, but she can't. She said the song made her feel homesick, like someone she loved was calling her name. And before she even realized what she was doing, she was walking into the freezing ocean. And she said the water should have shocked her because it was cold, but instead it felt warm. And she just felt her body walking deeper and deeper into the water. She said this is almost like an out-of-body experience because she's witnessing herself going deeper into the water and she can't stop it. She said when she finally felt like she snapped back into her body, something wrapped around her ankles and she screams. And she said whatever that was that grabbed her was incredibly strong. It yanked her straight down into complete darkness. She thought she was about to drown. She said she remembers holding her breath until it felt like her chest would explode. And then a woman appeared, or at least she thought it was a woman. It's like the woman brought some sort of light because she was able to see that her skin was shimmering. This woman's eyes, or this creature's eyes, were completely black. No whites, no pupil. She remembers her hair was long and black and it was floating like seaweed. Well, the creature then reached out and pressed 2 fingers against her throat. And she remembers that her fingers were really cold. But she felt a pain that was unbearable. She said the pain felt like her neck was being sliced open from the inside. And then suddenly, she breathed. Water. She says she still can't figure out how to explain this, but the ocean poured into her lungs without hurting, so she wasn't drowning anymore. She was breathing naturally as if she was standing on land. Now the creature standing in front of her says to her, "Do not be afraid." Now she also said that she heard that voice inside of her head. like they don't speak with their mouths. This creature pulled her in so much deeper than where she already was, and eventually the darkness disappeared, and below them was an entire city. It wasn't made of stone. It looked like enormous whale skeletons had been carved into temples. There were like broken cathedral windows, massive arches that were made up of these like what looked like white bones. She's looking around and she's getting a good look. She is seeing full-on mermaids, and she said there were hundreds of them. She said some of them looked beautiful from a distance and some of them And she said their tails weren't colorful like in the movies. They looked like skin of deep sea creatures, like covered in scars, hooks, and glowing parasites. None of them blinked, and they were all watching her. And also, side note, there were children mermaids. So she basically gets to looking around, and when she turns around, that's when she saw her, the eldest one. This mermaid was enormous. She said her tail alone was longer than a bus. And that one specifically was different than the rest because her eyes were completely white. She said when this creature looked at her, every memory that she's ever had flashed through her mind at once. Her childhood, her mother's face, every lie she'd ever told, every person she'd ever loved, she knew all of it. And then she finally spoke. Again, she's hearing her in her mind. She said something along the lines of, humans believe the sea belongs to them. And the other mermaids are chiming into this conversation too, saying it does not. You poison what feeds you. You take more than you return, with absolutely no gratitude or care to the environment. Now, they told her that if she wanted to survive this, she had an ultimatum. She either stays down there with them forever, or she goes back up to convince and gather people around her to take care of the environment, cleaning up beaches, making sure there's no plastic, being more cautious about littering, things like that. And she said, of course she took the option to live. She said after that, it's like the water spit her out. She was really weak and cold. Now, she kind of didn't know what to make of it anyway because she was only visiting South Africa. But now that she's back in the States, she says she thinks about that day all the time. Very cautious about recycling, littering, and things like that. Now, she's very conscious about littering, recycling, doing her part in keeping the planet clean. Overall, it taught her to care more about the earth that she lives in. She says that some of you guys should too. I guess submitting the story and me telling it was part of the deal. Thank you so much for submitting that story. If you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to DM it to me. Just because I give you the full video in one part doesn't mean you don't leave a comment. So go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Anyway, make sure you're following me for more spooky content from your favorite Haitian homegirl.
I experienced something terrifying and unexplainable right here in these woods when I was camping as a kid. And either I heard something real and very horrible happen to someone while they were getting dragged through the woods by something, or there's something much darker out here that I hope I never have to experience again. I've never told anyone about this. There's only two people in this world that know about it, and that's me and the friend I experienced it with. And this is going to make me sound crazy. Hell, maybe I am. But here's what happened. I was 12 years old, and I was going camping in the middle of the woods with my buddy Aaron, my best friend Aaron. And when I say in the middle of the woods, I mean in the middle of nowhere. I live in Kentucky. I got 80 acres of woods right on the Kentucky River, and that 80 acres of woods is surrounded with more woods. There is literally nothing here. And this particular spot that we like to camp, we used to camp there every summer. It was sort of like just this open clearing out in the middle of the woods, next to a dry creek, next to an old logging road that's no longer used. There used to be a town here of about 800 people back in the early 1800s. There's nothing here now, not a soul around. So this is a really cool spot to go and set up your tent and just hang out in the middle of nowhere. Now, we were country-ass little poor kids, all right? So the things that we would bring on a camping trip, our supplies would consist of like a 12-pack of pop, a bag of tater chips. We used to take packs of ramen noodles with us and just eat them dry. Just put the seasoning on it and eat it like a giant cracker. We'd take our pellet guns and a guitar, a flashlight, a battery-powered lantern. Aaron was my best friend in the world. He is still my best friend in the world to this day. We're both the same age, and we weren't afraid of anything when we were that age. We weren't scared of nothing. This is what we spent our time doing. We stayed in the woods at all times. Just me and Aaron hanging out, just being little country kids. So it's the middle of the night. We're hanging out inside of the tent with the lantern on, and it is pitch black outside. I mean, there is literally nothing outside except lightning bugs and bullfrogs. And we're doing what 12-year-old boys do. We're talking about chicks and we're talking about music. We're hanging out, having a good time. There are no cell phones. There are no tablets. And we are very far away from any parents, any grown-ups. We were free-range little kids. There's no way to get a hold of anyone close by. And the night would go from fun to terrifying very quickly. So we're sitting and talking, and suddenly we hear something in the woods outside the tent. There's sticks breaking. There's something moving through the woods coming towards us. Now, keep in mind, we're in the middle of nowhere. There are no houses around. There are no people around. But there's animals everywhere. There's deer all over the woods. But this was way too big to be an animal. And it's coming right at us. We have a battery-powered lantern hanging in the top of the center of the tent. We stop talking, and I look at Aaron and say, "Turn off the lantern," which immediately felt like a mistake. Because when Aaron reached up and turned off this lantern, suddenly we're in the dark. Whatever this is gets closer and louder until it's within 30 yards of the front of our tent. And we are camped right next to an old logging road, which is just a dry creek bed. There's no water in it. It's just full of rocks and sticks and leaves. But it used to be a logging road that was used by horse and buggy back in the 1800s to get goods from the Kentucky River up to the nearest road at the time. It hasn't been used in 200 years. And there are sticks breaking and rocks turning over. This is something big moving through the woods. And the closer it gets, the more distinct the sound becomes. Suddenly it sounds like something is being dragged through the woods, like someone is pulling a really heavy bag with them. But the sound that came with these drags sent chills all the way through my body, because with every drag there was the lowest and most horrifying groan you've ever heard. It sounded like someone breathing out from just the bottom of their gut every time this drag happened. It sounded like Keep in mind, we're little country kids, man. We've worked on cars. We've done derbies and mud runs, and I know the sound of a log chain when I hear one. And with each movement, there's the sound of a chain on rocks. And all of this together, I have cold chills all over my body telling you this. Suddenly, we realize that someone is being dragged in front of our tent. We are absolutely mortified at what we're hearing. It's pitch black, dark inside the tent, and me and Aaron are shoulder to shoulder, hugging in the center of this tent, while this sound drags past right outside the front of the tent. And it is like nothing I've ever heard. It sounded like what I've come to learn later in life as like a death rattle. It is just this deep and it moves past our tent. This whole experience lasted probably 5 minutes altogether, and it gets further and further and further up the creek. There is nowhere to go. This sound is just moving into the woods to nowhere. And it gets further and further away until suddenly we can't hear it anymore. All we hear is the sound of us breathing and our heart beating out of our chest. And it's gone. whatever it is has moved into the woods, and we start to whisper to each other, what the fuck was that? And Aaron says, get the flashlight. We have a flashlight in a bag in the corner of the tent. So I'm reaching to find this flashlight. I got the flashlight in my hand, and we know we have to get out of here. We have to get out of this tent and run home. So I get the flashlight in my hand, turn it on, we're back in the light. And me and Aaron are nose to nose with one another, whispering, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Let's go, man, let's get the fuck out of here. So we start gathering up our things, and we're about to unzip the front of this tent, when suddenly, outside the tent, a stick breaks, within a foot of this tent. Now the tent we're in is small. It's a little bitty 2-man tent, and it's like a dark brown color. And we didn't have any of the zippers open. Nothing was open, so we can't see outside this tent at all. I turn and shine the light towards that wall of the tent, the side that the stick broke on. And suddenly we can hear what sounds like, the only way I can describe it is like an old person breathing very, very low. We go dead silent, and all we can see is the inside of this tent wall. And what I saw next will be seared into my mind for the rest of my life. And the only way I can describe it is that it looked like a finger pushing in on the side of the tent, running down the side of the tent, something like this. And it ran all the way down the side of this tent, all the way till it was off the side, zip, off the front, and the breathing stopped. Suddenly, we're in silence. There was a period here of about 20 seconds of the most silent I've ever heard the world. We weren't breathing. We weren't moving. It was dead still. And it, still to this day, is one of the most petrified feelings I've ever had in my life. At this point, there is no holding the fear in anymore. Me and Aaron look at each other and panic. He grabs the zipper and we bust out of this tent as fast as we can go, screaming as hard as you can possibly scream. The flashlight just bouncing through the trees in the woods, and we run as hard as we've ever ran out of those woods and didn't look back. We ran all the way back to my dad's house, and of course we didn't sleep. We sat up until daylight talking about what happened. And once it got daylight enough, we went back. We went back to tear down the tent and look around, and sure enough, right outside the tent, leading down into the creek, there was about a 20-25 yard path of weeds and sticks laid over where it looked like something had been dragged into the creek. Now, yes, we were young kids when this happened, but this wasn't your childhood fear of when you see a ghost in the woods with one of your cousins. This was real life, pure terror. This was something very tangible and very real. Years later, in the same woods, my dad heard gunshots going off up in our woods. And, you know, we have 80 acres of woods. It's private property. Nobody's supposed to be on our hillside. And so he gets his rifle and goes up into the woods. And he said it sounded like there were 2 guns shooting back and forth. And he gets up on a high point to look over the hill where it sounds like these guns are going off. And he said it sounded like there was a gunfight going on within 100 yards of him. And no one was there. He could hear the bullets flying. He could hear the trees snapping where they were being shot. and people yelling back and forth, like there was a duel happening, and there was no one there. And eventually it just stopped, and he came home absolutely terrified and confused about what he experienced. And this just happened just a few years ago in the same woods. And I can't help but wonder, this was a town called Springport back in the 1800s. There was 800 people who lived in these hills, and there's still stone piles and stuff all over these hillsides. We find horseshoes and stuff all the time where this town was. And I can't help but wonder, was this something from very long ago still hanging around here? Was this some residual energy left over from back in the day? Was this a paranormal ghost kind of experience that I experienced when I was a kid? Or was there a real person outside of that tent that night? We never told anybody about what happened that night. I don't know if we were just afraid to tell our parents, afraid they were going to think we were crazy. Aaron is still my best friend to this day. And we never told anyone until this moment, right now. You're the first people I've ever told this story to. And whether you believe the story or not, I hope you never have to experience anything like this. And if you don't believe in the darkness that exists in this world, I hope you never have to experience it, because this was very real.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much, because you got to stay fine. But come on, bestie, yeah. Hi, bestie boo, I missed you. What you doing? You know it's time to go get your snack and your gardening tools, right? Okay. For the newcomers, if you don't like the little intro, skip to all the way when I start the story. Number 1, I'm having a sale on the ebook this Friday, the 19th. Again, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're gonna go live. We're gonna do it like we always do, and it's super fun. Sometimes, like others, buy the book and give it away. So I do giveaways on live too, so don't miss it. Number 2, I will be in LA for BT weekend. So the weekend of the 26th, I'll be in LA. Number 3, don't forget to go to my YouTube channel to watch my stories in long form, okay? All right. Now, for the sake of the story, let's call this girl Marie. Marie has been married to her husband for about 10 years. They have 3 kids together, beautiful kids. And everything was great and peachy until her husband decided to go and have an affair. So boom, one day, her husband and his coworkers go out to a bar to celebrate like something that has to do with work, right? And at the bar, he sees the most gorgeous woman he ever laid his eyes on. Now, mind you, he's out with his coworkers, so he doesn't want to like cheat on his wife blatantly in front of his coworkers. So he's looking at this girl. He's like, damn, that girl look good, but I'm married. He decided, I'm not going to approach her. I'm just going to like stay away from the temptation. Except the temptation did not stay away. The temptation came to him. The temptation came to him, started flirting with him and everything. And of course, he was trying to like save face for his coworkers, like he's not interested. But she kind of caught on, because once he said, you know, those are my coworkers, she kind of caught on and was like, oh, these are your coworkers. And she saw the ring on his, finger. So before she left, she wrote her number on his tab. And after contemplating it for about a week, he calls her. And a few days after he calls her, they decide to go out. But they decide to go out in a whole different state. Now, let's come back to Marie. So that night he went to the bar, right? He came back home. And when he came back home, although he didn't do anything wrong, Marie felt something. Marie is very, very spiritual. And as women, we're naturally just spiritual. We feel things, we know things. We may not know what we're feeling or but we know. And so she's asking him, like, how was the work thing? Like, was it fun? Because she feels something is wrong. She just doesn't know what it is. So about a week later, her husband tells her that he has another work thing to do, except it's in another state because they have to meet a client in another state. Now, this is not the first time he had to go to another state to meet a client. But this is the first time that it didn't feel right. Again, she doesn't know why it doesn't feel right, but she's just feeling it. So boom, the husband is in a whole other state with this girl, and they are having the time of their lives. So much so that he ends up sleeping with her. Now, originally, that wasn't his plan. He really just wanted to like get to know her because he still kind of felt guilty about it, but she looked so damn good and she's so flirtatious and she know her way around. And ultimately, he's a man, he couldn't exist. He sleeps with her. So they do what they do, they sleep together, they finish their little boo vacation, whatever, and he comes back home. Except when he comes back home, he looks different. When he comes through the door, his wife looked at him and saw his eyes were hollow. He looks drained. So naturally, she asked, like, oh my God, like, what were you doing? You look so tired. And so he gave her some bullshit, like, oh yeah, we went out with the client, we went hiking, so yeah, I'm pretty exhausted, we didn't get much sleep. But again, it does not feel right. And so ultimately, like I said, the wife is very spiritual. So all of this is bothering her. Like, she's thinking about it at night because she's feeling it. She just don't know what she's feeling. But also her husband is amazing. Like, he's an amazing husband. He's an amazing dad. He's never given her any reason to doubt him before. So she's like battling with the thought of like, am I really just overthinking this? Or am I just like, So she does the one thing that she knows how to do. She went to God about it. Woo! Woo! Ooh. Let me tell you something, baby. Anointed spiritual people like us, you don't want us to go to God about anything. But the funny thing is, we do. Me personally, you know what? Let's get back to the story. I'm going to start talking. Anyway, she goes to God about it and she tells God, like, I love my husband. He's a good man. You put him in my life. But something feels wrong. My gut is telling me that something is wrong. I just don't know what it is, so I'm giving it to you. I'm trusting that you're going to handle it and you're going to reveal everything that I need to know. And y'all know how those prayers go. Anyway, she prays about it. Everything is pretty much normal like they are, except her husband is not normal. It seems every day he's getting more and more exhausted. He's complaining more about work. He can't get up for, to go to work. And about a month goes past and this man is damn near bedridden. But he's also very, cold to her. And y'all know, once they start being assholes. However, she's writing it out. She's like, maybe this is something going on with him, in his life, whatever. He just don't want to talk about it. She already prayed about it. But little does she know, he's being cold to her because now, after that great time he just had with this girl's not answering him. She's not answering his phone call. She's not answering his text messages. So he's like, what the fuck? We just had such a good time. Although I wasn't really gonna I was gonna try to not do it again because that was so very wrong of me. Now he wants to do it again because why are you not answering me? So he had to take time off of work because at this point, his health is just not good. But he goes to the doctor and nothing's wrong. The doctor sees everything's normal and, they can't find anything wrong. So as he's home, whenever wifey is not home, he's blowing this girl's phone up to the point where she ended up blocking him. And so now he is extra confused. You blocked me? At this point, he's getting skinnier and skinnier, So one day, wifey comes home and that feeling, she's still feeling that, and it gets heavier and heavier every day. And it seems like the worse he gets, the heavier the feeling gets for her. And at that point, she's been battling with the thought of going through his phone for about a week now. But she's like, bro, we are not, this is not us. We don't go through each other's phones and stuff. But she ended up doing it. She waited till he fell asleep and she went through his phone. And she saw him calling this girl multiple times, texting this girl multiple times. She's seeing the fact that the girl blocked them. She's seeing the messages from that last work trip. She is absolutely heartbroken. She's heartbroken. She's even more heartbroken because after you done slept with this girl, you came back, you don't even look right. I'm taking care of you and you blowing this girl's phone up. So the wife takes the girl's number from his phone and decides to call the girl herself because she needs answers. So Marie calls the girl and Marie's like, hey, I am so-and-so's wife. I know about you guys. I know that you guys went, on a vacation recently together. I'm not trying to come at you. I just want some answers. If you want him, let me know. If you guys, I just want to know what's going on. Is he going to leave me for you? I just want to be prepared because we have kids. And Marie got an answer she never even expected. That lady told Marie, start packing your things up now. Start getting your stuff together and start making sure that you are in his will. So she's like, what do you mean? Huh? Huh? That's not usually what you hear from the side bitches, you know? She's like, what do you mean make sure I'm in his will? I'm his wife. Of course I'm in his will. And she said, good, because your husband is going to pass away in about a month. She's like, whoa, what you mean? Hold on, you gonna kill him? And she basically tell her, yeah, I did already. I did my job. She's like, wait a minute, wait. The side bitch says he hasn't been feeling good, right? He looks terrible, right? Side was very real with her. She basically told her, like, hey, this is what I do. I do black magic, and I especially do black magic. I target men who are married that are willing to cheat on their wives. So I can teach them a lesson, one, and get their, destiny. Not destiny, but like, y'all know what I mean. And that's why I slept with him, and that's why I haven't talked to him since I slept with him. I got what I wanted already. If he wanted to keep his life, he should never cheated on his wife. And the wife is like, please, that's still my husband. You can't do this to me. And she basically said, well, I already did. So you're either going to get prepared or you're going to be fucked out of luck. And she hangs up the phone and blocks the wife. She is super confused and shocked and angry and sad. Because again, she's a very spiritual person. She knows about this stuff. And she knows that that girl was dead ass. She's very well aware that she's about to lose her husband. But she got kids with him. She can't lose him. So immediately she calls her pastor. She tells her pastor everything. And the pastor came to the house to talk to the husband and confront the husband about it. He ended up admitting to everything. Now he's terrified, But she didn't tell neither him or the pastor that she said make sure you're in his will. She did call and make sure that she was. And every day, like, the church members came and started praying over them. But unfortunately, none of that worked. About a month later, he indeed passed away. So yeah, that's the story, y'all. Time is almost up. I give y'all 10 minutes. Don't forget to let me know what you ate. Don't forget about the sale. I love you.
Want to get creeped out? Let's talk about the death ship of Platte River. Ever heard of it? This is a ghost ship from Wyoming, and there's some really chilling, weird stories about this. So, the first sighting, 1862, was a trapper named Leon, and he was building a log cabin for his future bride. This was along the Platte River. On September 12th, 1862, Leon paused his work and looked upstream. He saw a gigantic ball of mist, or fog, moving along the river. He ran towards the riverbank shocked, and his dog began to whine and whimper and pace, clearly distressed. From the swirling mist, a ship slowly appeared. It looked like it was ancient, and it was covered in what looked like sparkling frost. Leon could hear people rowing, he could hear voices giving commands, and then the crew became visible to him. There were sailors that were standing in a tight circle on the deck, completely still, and they were all staring at him with blank faces. The ship seemed to hover in place, time seemed to slow. All Leon could hear was his heartbeat and his dog whining. Even the birds had gone silent. The sailors then stepped aside. They revealed a square of frosty canvas laid out on the deck, and on that canvas was the corpse of a young woman encased in frost. As the ship drifted closer, Leon realized the truth. The body, the woman, was his fiancée, Margaret. He screamed her name and rushed forward, but the moment he did, the ship vanished instantly. Leon stayed at the riverbank until sunset, but the ship never returned. When he arrived at their home, not the log cabin he was building, he learned that Margaret had passed away that afternoon. This experience allegedly made him leave Wyoming sooner than planned. This ship was reportedly sighted in 1862, 1887, and 1903, and each time it appeared, it would bring death to those who saw it. The sightings were said to have been recorded by the Cheyenne Bureau of Psychological Research based on eyewitness accounts. In 1948, author Victor Gaddis claimed to have uncovered these lost first-hand reports. And since then, these stories have been retold for decades as a haunting in Wyoming. Let me know if you want to hear about the other two stories.
If you're just lying down to bed, maybe you want to skip this one till morning. One of my followers, who would like to remain anonymous, sent this story in from when it was around October 2022. She starts off by saying since she's 4 years old, she was always terrified of the notion of just waking up in the middle of the night in the darkness. She is 16 now, but she says that back when this happened, she was 12 years old, and it was a dark and eerie night. She said it didn't help that she lived in a remote village where the nearest house was a 20-minute walk away. She lived in one of the biggest houses in the area with her parents and her grandparents. There were 4 bedrooms, and since one was hers, one was her parents', and one was her grandmother's, there was a spare. So, you know, as people do, they used that extra room for storage. And she did mention, though, that there was an old telephone in that room that nobody used. The only time anybody used it was when her grand aunt would call, but otherwise it was just kind of in there with the storage. And she said she remembers it had a really funny smell to it. So one night it was raining heavily. A thunderstorm began. She said lightning was flashing and a crack of thunder roared across the sky, and it woke her up from her dead sleep. She sat up terrified, and her room was dark and gloomy. And she said the only way she could even see anything was from this dimly lit lamp across the room. She's kind of calming down now, and she's preparing to go back to sleep when all of a sudden she hears something. This is literally out of a horror movie. She said that old yellow telephone started ringing from inside the storage room. She forgot to mention that that room, the storage room, was across from her bedroom. So then she goes, I honestly don't know why I did this. She says, I could have left the phone ringing. I mean, who's calling at 2 a.m. anyway? Oh yeah, it was 2 a.m. But she decides she's going to go answer the phone. No, thank you. So she creeps out of her room and she turns the knob and creaks the door open to the storage room. And sure enough, that phone is still ringing. I'm sure her heart was racing fast. And she picks up the phone and she says, hello? And then immediately it just clicks dead. So she sets it down and she's just about to leave the room when it starts ringing again. So she picks it up again and the line goes dead. Oh my gosh, this moment. She says she was tired and she was trembling and clouds rolled across the moon, making the room even darker. So she's just about to rush out of the room when all of a sudden behind her comes the sound of the floorboard creaks behind her towards the back of the dark room. She says she knows it wasn't her who made the creaking sound because it was from a floorboard way in the back and she was just about out the door. Guys, she said, that is when I turned around and I saw the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. She said there was something in the shadows hidden within the boxes of books. And it was grinning at her, this menacing grin. She said she could see its teeth. They were squared off like humans' teeth, but obviously not human. She said it was tall and skinny and at least 2 meters tall. It was so dark she wasn't able to make out the skin's texture or color, but she said its eyes were completely black. She screams hysterically and she runs out and locks the door behind her. She ran all the way to her grandmother's room and she wakes her up sobbing and freaking out. So she is shaking and telling her grandmother about everything she saw, describing it in the best detail that she could. And her grandmother just goes silent and her eyes widen and she goes pale. She went back in her mind to when she was a child. She told her that she had a dream when she was a kid, that she was in a strange room and she saw a creature and it looked exactly the same as she just described. She goes, we moved out 6 months later. I still sleep with the lights on, as one does. She said, my grandma and I share a room now, and I am still scared. She also says she still sees that thing in her dreams sometimes. I cannot freaking imagine. I would probably never sleep with the lights off again either. I honestly wouldn't. So she wants to know, what do we all think that this was? Absolutely terrifying. That is what this was. Anyway, guys, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to know as well. If you have your own creepy story, you gotta share it. If you're new here, follow for more. And don't forget to check out my Creepy Storytime merch up in my link tree in my bio.
Have you ever had a dream and then that dream came true? Now, there was this man named Cal. Cal was from Connecticut, and he said one weekend, him and his family went on this camping trip. They were staying in their family's RV. Well, he said the first night they were there, they were all asleep when they awoke to their father screaming. And so Cal runs over to his father, and he could see that he's visibly shaken by something. He's, has these tears running down his face. So he says, Father, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? He says, Dad said, I had this dream. And in this dream, there was this big flood. And there were people drowning all around me. And they were calling out for help. And I couldn't save them. I couldn't do anything. And he said, it felt so real that I didn't think it was a dream. And so Cal's like, well, were those people in your dream? Like, were they me and the family? He said, no, they looked Asian, like they were from somewhere in Asia. So he comforts his dad and he tells me, it's probably just a dream. So they all go back to bed. Well, in the morning, his dad just couldn't shake that dream. And he said, I want to turn on the news. So they turn on the news station. And sure enough, they see on the news that giant tsunami that had hit Indonesia that day. And as he's watching them show pictures and scenes of what had happened, he recognized this place from his dreams. He said, I was there. I seen the people drowning in the water. And Cal knew that he must have had some sort of intuition about what was going to happen. Now, there was this other story of this woman from Los Angeles, Vivian. She said one night she was in bed and she just remembered having this really weird dream. She said she was walking around this big city. She said there were these big buildings and it looked like it was Japan. There was Japanese writing all over these buildings. She said in the middle of the city, she sees this little girl and she's crying. And she walked up to the little girl and she said the little girl started to say to her, I've lost my mommy and I've lost my daddy. They've drowned in the water. Like, can you help me? Can you help me save them? And she said the next thing she knows, she woke up. But her bed was completely saturated in water. It wasn't from her. The ceiling, the walls, nothing was leaking. But somehow her her bed was filled full of water. And she said that day she went to work and all of a sudden on the news, they started to talk about the tsunami that had hit Japan. And it made her feel like she had some sort of vision as to what was going to happen.
Have you ever heard a noise out in the middle of the woods that led to something that you couldn't explain? Because this story comes from one of my followers named Kevin, and he was hiking in Scotland. Buckle up, because this story makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Apparently, him and his few friends, they were on a week's vacation in Scotland, and they were hiking deep in the woods. And if you didn't know this, part of the Appalachian Mountains are actually in Scotland. And as you guys know, those mountains have far more tales than people like to tell. Well, apparently they were out on this few-day camping trip, and they were walking through the middle of the woods, and they thought they heard what sounded like an echo of a voice. Said at first they all stopped and looked at each other, and they were like, hey, is that a woman or is that someone out in the middle of the woods? All started to listen and they realized that this noise sounded more of like an echo of a person's voice than it was an actual person's voice calling out from the distance. Even though he said it was very faint, he said that they could tell it wasn't that far away from them, so they decided to take a hike further into the woods to try and find this voice. He said it wasn't long until they started hiking more into the woods that you can tell this echo started to get closer and closer. As they all started to look around for this echo, they started to get a really eerie feeling that made the hair on the back of their neck stand up. As they searched around for a few minutes, they said they started to get frustrated because they couldn't decide where it was coming from. And right before they decided to give up, they said as they turned around to walk back, they saw what looked like a pipe sticking out of the ground in the distance. Now, mind you, this was out in the middle of the wilderness in Scotland, so to find a pipe sticking out of the ground was very strange. But he said that they walked up to it, and as they got closer, they literally heard the sound of what it sounded like, an echo of a voice of something, almost like it was saying help. But he said the closer that they got to it, you couldn't make out the words it was saying, but it was definitely the echo of somebody saying something, and he said it was just literally just echoing through this pipe. He said he put his ear up to it and they started to hear, the echo over and over again before he decided to stick his mouth on it and scream, hello. Said that after he screamed hello, you can hear the echo of his voice go further and further into this pipe. Said that he waited around for a few minutes to hear something back, but they didn't hear anything back right away. And it wasn't long after before they got up to walk away, he said he heard the sound of, it sounded like a woman almost, and he couldn't make out the words of what she was saying, but it was obviously an echo of a woman's voice saying something, almost as if she heard them trying to talk to her. Now, if that's not creepy enough, he said that they sat there and tried to communicate back and forth, but I guess the distance between their voice and the person's voice was so far away that they couldn't really communicate and have a direct conversation. Now, mind you, again, this is middle of the wilderness, no cell phones, no nothing, so there was no way that they could pinpoint a location or anything, but he told me that eventually they decided to drop it and just let it go, and they walked out of the woods, and he said until this day that story bugs him, and he said that they all talk about it till this day, like wishing that they can go figure out who it was or what it was and if it's something that they can do about. You guys tell me what you think it was down in the comments, because that story makes the hair on my arm stand up.
One of my favorite things about Spooky Scary Storytime since starting the series has been sharing the elder stories from people who maybe told a younger family member something in passing that would have been lost to time had it not been passed along. And so I sort of look at this series as like an archive of sorts of these older stories. Of course, there's no way to prove the validity of any of these stories, but I still think they're interesting. I say that because I just came across an email from someone named Autumn who says that her grandfather passed away in March of this year and her grandmother passed away 3 weeks after that. And as she was going through their belongings, she came across this article from the newspaper from Truman, Arkansas, from when her grandfather was a boy, and he apparently encountered this creature in the woods that made the local news, and she actually attached the article. It just sort of goes to show you that like these types of strange encounter stories have been around for a long time, even before social media. Trends can obviously make things go viral on social media or create urban legends even, but I thought this one was just a little bit different from the types of stories that I normally cover, so here you go. In the interest of clarifying rumors, not meaning to cause anyone to panic, the following story was told by Nathan Russell, 12, son of Mr. and Mrs. Hubert Russell of Route 3, Truman near Central, and I did clarify that this was Arkansas. Nathan said he was walking through the woods about 9:30 Friday morning, a half mile from a house where Mr. and Mrs. Virgil Radson live near Central Community. He walked into a group of about 4 pine trees when he said he noticed a creature squatting on the lower branch of one tree with one arm holding onto another branch. The creature was in a tree about 1 foot higher than me and about 4 feet away from me, Nathan said. It jumped out of the tree like an ape, letting its arms swing in front, he related. He made a loud, hard breathing noise that made you quiver all over and scared me to death. We just stood there and stared at each other, the youngster said. He had a sort of gleam in his eyes, and I couldn't move for about 3 minutes after I saw him. Then I began to run, and it was chasing me. It stayed about 2 yards behind me until I got to within half-quarter from the Radsons' home, the young man explained. He described the creature as having the outward appearance of a cross between a dog and ape with the head and shoulders of a human. It was about 5 feet 8 inches tall and had arms about half as long as mine, the 12-year-old said. Its head was bald, but there was no hair on the neck, but from the neck down halfway there was long hair. From there down, the hair was short like a hound's. It also had human ears and eyes like a hog's, he pointed out. He says that the creature grabbed his left arm with his front paw or arms, told of the paws being soft on the interior of the hand, but they did not leave scratches. And his brother says there was a bruise there for about 2 days. After Autumn found this article, she asked her dad about it, and her dad was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a newspaper article about it, but yeah, he did tell me about it one time. He didn't really like to talk about it, but I was watching something about cryptids on my phone, and he opened up about it and explained the story, basically word for what is said in this article in remarkable detail. Autumn says she then called her aunt, who is her grandfather's sister, and she asked about the incident, and her aunt corroborated the story, and so yeah, he didn't leave the house for almost a year afterward because he was so terrified of the woods. Reference, she says her grandfather was born in 1954, and the article references him being about 12, so this would have happened in 1966 when this paper was published.
There's a particular set of rules that you must remember if you are to camp alone. Now, the first rule of camping alone is never set up your tent at night, because this is when you are the most vulnerable, and you cannot keep focus on what's behind you, what's around you, because you're focused on putting up the tent. The second rule is always have a fire going. No matter what time of day it is, always keep that fire going and keep it nice and bright and tall. The third rule that you must remember if you're camping alone is when you go in your tent at night, make sure it is completely sealed up. No holes, make sure everything is zipped and closed, because it's believed that stuff can even come in through the tiniest of cracks. Now, the fourth rule, when you are camping alone, you should never make noise at night. You should never whistle. You should never sing. You should try and keep it quiet as possible. Now, the fifth rule, which is the most important, is always have some sort of entertainment. Keep yourself occupied. Have some music. Have an audiobook, but never let yourself start to wander and let your mind go, because that's when you are the most vulnerable. Now, there was this man named Jonathan. Jonathan decided he was going to go camping alone up in the Rocky Mountains. So he heads up to the spot, and he sets up his tent and gets his campsite ready. And he said he just remembered that, there were all these sounds of wildlife and the wind blowing, and it was just very peaceful and sort of like musical. And he said, he had his dog with him, and they sat around the fire for a bit, and it started to get late, so he decided to go into his tent. So as he goes in his tent, his dog lays over to the side of him. And soon he begins to doze off. Well, at some point in time in the night, he awakes to something shaking his tent. And he said he could hear this voice saying, please come out of the tent. Like, I need help. Help me, please. Get out of the tent. Help me. And so he's like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? So he goes to the zipper, he unzips the tent, and he goes outside. But when he gets out of the tent, there's nobody around. It's just completely quiet. And it was eerily quiet because he couldn't hear the wind anymore. He couldn't hear the wildlife. And he said that the other strange thing was when he went to bed, there was this bright full moon overhead. But as he looked up in the sky, the moon was gone. There wasn't any clouds. It was a completely clear night. But the moon somehow had disappeared. So this kind of freaked him out a little bit. He goes back inside his tent and he zips up the zipper. Well, he lays down and he said, his dog would come to the side of him or would lay by his feet. And that always made him feel a little better. So he said, he started to kind of doze off again. He said that's when he kept feeling like the dog, like rubbing his leg. And he's like, what are you doing, boy? Like, I'm trying to sleep. And he said that's when he looks down at his feet and there's nothing there. And when he looks over, his dog is right over here towards his head. So he is like, what's going on? Like, was there an animal or something? He unzips the tent, he goes outside, said, there was nothing out there. As he got ready to go back in his tent, he said he started to see these shadows. He said he could see figures that looked like they were tall, skinny, kind of lanky. They almost looked like they were crawling around amongst the trees. They were all around him. So he hurried up, got back inside his tent, and he zips it up. And he just said, he's just sitting there with his dog. And the whole time he thought it was strange because the dog didn't alert to any of this. It didn't bark. It was just quiet. It was just laying there. And he said that's when all of a sudden he felt this tent start to move. Something grabbed the tent and was dragging him. And he was so afraid that he passes out. And when he awakes, he said the tent was completely still, felt like everything was normal again. He said he thought it must have been a dream. Until he unzips the tent and he realizes he is a good distance away from his campsite. So he grabs his dog and they run out of there back to his vehicle and they left that night. And they left the tent and everything behind. So it's important to remember when you camp alone, always know the rules.
Hey besties, it's like 3 in the morning right now, so you know what time it is. But before I scare y'all, I gotta give y'all a quick little transparency. I know I haven't been pushing out story times as much. I'm honestly so mentally exhausted and I don't know what's been going on with me. All my body wants to do is sleep. It's one of those things when I'm trying to get up out my sleep, my body's like, no, sit down. I think it's mostly because I'm trying to do so many things because my future is very, very, very important to me. And I'm pretty sure I got ADHD. And so I try to do 1,000 things at once and I get burnt out. However, I am very grateful to be mentally exhausted from the things that I prayed for. So that part, I'm very, very grateful for. So I'm not complaining at all. Now, I didn't sing the intro song because usually if my OGs, if you know, when I can't go to sleep in the middle of the night, I do very short, not even really story times, but just reminders, Anyway, so if you're up with me and it's 3 in the morning where you are, I know it depends on the place that you're, I'm up because I was sleeping all day. But you're up because you randomly woke up at 3 in the morning. Did you pray? Did you pray? Because you woke up for a reason. My grandma always told me, if you ever randomly wake up at 3 in the morning for no reason at all, nothing woke you up, God is trying to get you to see or pay attention to something. It's never, ever for no reason. Well, I'm not going to say never, ever. That's exaggerating a little bit. Prime example, I had this friend that randomly woke up at 3 in the morning one time. And because I had told my friend that, he remembered. He remembered me telling him, if you woke up randomly, Now, he's not the religious type or the spiritual type at all. He's a guy. He don't really care. However, it stayed in his head. So he woke up at 3 in the morning, and the first thing he remembered when he looked at the time was what I told him. However, he's he was just thinking about it. But something made him feel really, really, really uneasy, he tried to get his phone and try to doom scroll till he fell back asleep. However, I don't know, something didn't feel right. So he decided to go check on, everybody in the house. Now, I do have to say that his parents are super religious, but because his parents were religious is the reason why he wasn't so religious, because it was kind of like forced on him, Anyway, so he starts checking on everybody in the house. Like, he peeked in his parents' room. They're asleep. He checked on his little sister. She's asleep, and now he goes to check on his little brother. And when he checked on his little brother, like, he opened the door, he peeked in, he was asleep, and he closed the door. He was about to go back to his room, but something told him, like, wait, hold on, go double check for real. So this time he actually went in the room. When he first peeked through the door, he could see his little brother's body laying down. However, he couldn't really see his face. But when he got closer, he realized his little brother's eyes are wide the fuck open, and it's creepy as hell. Actually really scary. So he's thinking his brother's playing a joke. He's like, yo, why you ain't tell me you was up? You heard me checking up on you. But his brother didn't respond. So he's like, yo, you good? And he got even closer, only to realize that his brother's mouth is also slightly open and his eyes are wide open. And he also realized there are tears coming out of his little brother's eyes. And when he really looked, his brother was looking at a specific part in the room. And that was the top ceiling corner of the room. So when he looked up to where his little brother was looking at, he could have sworn he seen a dark, cloudy looking thing. So of course his heart drops to his ass, but his worry is his little brother. Now, all of this happened in a matter of 2 seconds. Looked at the brother, peeped, looked at the ceiling, peeped, went to his brother. He started shaking his brother, and his brother seemed to come back. And the moment his brother comes back, he is sobbing. And he's like, can I sleep with you? Can I sleep with you? Can I sleep with you? He's like, what's wrong? What happened? Lo and behold, the little brother was having sleep paralysis. However, after he, woke up his little brother, when he looked back at the ceiling again, the thing was gone. And so when his little brother saw him look at that part of the ceiling, the little brother looked at him and was like, did you see it too? And so he was the dark, cloud looking thing. The little brother, mind you, the little brother's way younger, probably 9 years old. The little brother's like, no, the devil. Oh, baby, that's all he needed to hear. He grabbed his little brother, immediately went to his parents' room. Now, again, he didn't really care about, religion. However, that night he did. He woke his parents up so fast and told his parents what happened. So, his parents are prayer warriors. Immediately, they start praying, they start anointing the brother's room, the house, all of that at 3 a.m. As they're doing that, his dad tells him, check the Ring cameras to see if there was anything weird around the house. And lo and behold, in the Ring camera by the brother's window, there's a cat. There's an all-black cat just sitting and staring through the brother's window. Mind you, his window is upstairs, so the cat is sitting there looking up. Oh, but it gets worse, because per the timeline, when he got his brother out of the sleep paralysis, the cat disappeared. The cat was in the footage 1 second, and the next, poof, disappeared. Damn, I said this wasn't gonna be long, because I usually don't make them this long, but and that nigga left me the longest voice message I think I ever received in my life. Actually, it wasn't even long. It was just multiple one of them. He was absolutely freaking out. But I was sleeping, of course. And in the morning when I listened to them, I called them, and I was just like, oh, well, it's a good thing that your parents prayed. They prayed, they anointed the house, so y'all should be good. And then he tried to blame me because I told him anyway, yeah, so that's the little story time, y'all. Oh, I'll be in LA next week for BET weekend. So if I have any followers out in Cali, yes. There's something else I'm supposed to tell you guys too. I don't think I'm remembering. Oh. I can't believe I forgot that. I'm having a sale on the ebook on Friday, but I feel like I should move it up to another day because I have not been promoting like I should, so everybody knows. It's a few days before Friday, and I have not been making videos, y'all. That's why y'all see me posting these filler videos, because I still want to be posting. However, yeah. Anyway, send me some words of encouragement in the comments. Not bad, not it's a bad, y'all know what I mean. Anyway, I love you. Bye.
Let's read a scary story. This one is titled, The Suspect We Were Chasing Died 4 Days Ago. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. My name is John, and at 32 years old, I've been with the department a few years now, working ordinary night shifts Beside me was Miller, my senior partner of 10-year veteran who usually kept his mouth shut. 1 year ago, we received an unusual call. It was a break-in a local morgue, not the most common place for criminal activity. However, considering the chemicals stored there, it wouldn't have been out of the realm of possibility that drug addicts might be interested. We took the call, and when we arrived, the custodian was waiting outside, visibly shaken. He explained that when he was mopping the floor, he saw something moving in his peripheral vision. When he looked up, he saw someone running across the hallway and disappeared into a room. The problem was that the lights were off while he was cleaning, so he couldn't get a clear look at who it was. Feeling vulnerable and exposed, he thought it was best to call the police. At first, we suspected it could have been kids messing around, or maybe the custodian had seen things in the dark. But he was certain, and it convinced us to investigate. We entered the morgue and began calling out to anyone who might be inside. With the custodian leading the way, we started walking down the main corridor, checking the side rooms as we went. Each room revealed nothing unusual: labs for analysis, storage for tools, and paperwork. I entered a dark room, turned on the light, and once the room was lit, I saw it was nothing more than a waiting room for the relatives of the deceased. I quickly swept the area, checking every spot where someone could be hiding, and as I finished, I heard my partner's voice cut through the silence. He was shouting, "Hey, stop! Turn around!" Exiting the room quickly, I saw him standing in the hallway with his gun drawn, pointing towards the end of the corridor. "She went around the corner," he explained, motioning to the left. The custodian, now standing behind us, informed us that the left side led to a dead end. Realizing we had the intruder cornered, we moved toward the ends of the corridor, reassuring her that she would be safe if she surrendered. I peeked around the corner, seeing the woman standing at the end of the hallway. It was too dark for me to see her clearly, but I could make out her long, fair hair. Trying to de-escalate the situation, I stepped forward, hoping to speak with her, but as soon as she noticed me, she quickly opened a large gray door behind her and darted through it, slamming it shut. I hurried to the door only to find it locked. I banged on the door, calling for her to come out, but there was no response. My partner and the custodian joined me after hearing what happened. The custodian seemed puzzled. He explained that the door couldn't be locked from the inside. With growing unease, he unlocked the door and we entered, weapons drawn. I swept the room with my flashlight, revealing an empty room. It felt cold, even for a morgue. The space was mostly scattered equipment, but my attention was drawn to two gurneys in the center. One of the gurneys was covered by a sheet, a body-shaped lump beneath it. We immediately suspected that the woman was hiding beneath it, but as we approached, we noticed a sickening stench in the air. It was the unmistakable smell of decay. I quickly pulled the sheet back, and to our horror, underneath was the very same woman we had just been chasing, a toe tag dangling from her foot. According to the tag, she died 4 days earlier. Miller retired 3 months after that night, pulling up stakes and moving downtown. We never talked about what we saw at the morgue, definitely not during the paperwork, and certainly not to the guys at the precinct. If you put a ghost in an official police report, they don't give you a medal, they give you a psychological evaluation and a desk job. So we buried it. But you can't really bury something like that forever. Let me know your thoughts, and as always, if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. This happened a few years ago, and now, to this day, my husband refuses to question my intuition ever again. My husband is one of the most outgoing people you'll ever meet. He'll strike up a conversation with anyone, and he genuinely believes the best in people. I, however, am the opposite. I take note of things. Notice things like expressions, the way people look at you for just a second too long, and the way a smile doesn't reach someone's eyes. My gut has saved us more than once, but this story is the one that finally convinced my husband to trust it. Before becoming a police officer, my husband worked in the medical unit of our county jail. While he worked there, he became friends with an older nurse practitioner. We'll call her Jill. She was in her 70s, but looked decades younger. She was energetic, intelligent, and unbelievably kind. Too kind, almost. When she left her job, she gave my husband a gift card and a handwritten note thanking him for his friendship, and she invited our family to breakfast so that our families could get to know each other. It sounded harmless at the time. I had a 1-year-old son and was pregnant with our second baby, so we met them at the Cracker Barrel. The moment I saw Jill, I knew something wasn't right. I felt it. I couldn't explain it, but I felt it. She smiled constantly, complimented everything, laughed a little too hard at every joke, and treated us like we'd known each other for years. Her husband Bill, on the other hand, seemed completely different, quiet and reserved. It felt like he was confused about why he was even there. I remember looking at him and thinking he seemed normal, but looking at Jill... Still, though, I ignored it. I pushed the feeling aside. Over the next several months, we met for dinners, community events, and little outings around the town. And then one day, Jill invited us to her home. Immediately, I wanted to say no. Something inside me screamed not to go, but my husband adored these people. He'd grown up without a mother, so I think part of him loved the attention she gave him. So we went. Their house was enormous. Far too large for two elderly people with no children. Everything inside was spotless. Perfect. Expensive antiques lined every room, china cabinets filled to full capacity, silver collections polished to perfection, old paintings, grandfather clocks, trinkets. It definitely didn't scream warm and inviting. Jill eventually told us that she had never been able to have children because of something traumatic that happened earlier in her life. And me being pregnant at the time, my heart broke for her. It made a little sense to me why she seemed so drawn to our family then. Maybe she simply wanted to experience something that she never got to have. Months passed, and my husband was accepted into the police academy, and money became extremely tight. We were surviving paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes our bank account was negative before payday. Jill and Bill offered us money. We refused. Then they started helping in other ways. Extra groceries, paper towels, cleaning supplies, boxes of diapers, baby clothes. Every week it seemed like they'd accidentally bought too much of something and wanted us to have it. I appreciated it, but every gift made me feel more indebted to them. As my husband became busier with training, Jill started inviting just me and my son over during the day. I went because I felt obligated, but oddly enough, I became close with Bill. We'd drink coffee together while my son played. He reminded me of the grandfather I'd never had. All the while, Jill adored my son. She carried him everywhere, bought toys specifically to keep at her house, sang songs to him, spoiled him with gifts. She loved him. And to be honest, it really seemed like he loved her too. But no matter how comfortable I became, that strange feeling never disappeared. Then I went into labor with my second son, and ironically, it happened while Jill and I were shopping at Target. She drove me home, grabbed my hospital bags, and rushed me to the hospital. My husband was stuck at the police academy. My sister-in-law was coming to pick up my oldest son, so for about 30 minutes, Jill was alone with him. Those were the longest 30 minutes of my life. My sister-in-law couldn't find them anywhere. I remember texting frantically through contractions, convinced she'd driven away with my child. Eventually, she spotted Jill driving around the hospital campus and flagged her down. My son was perfectly fine, nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake the panic. Months later, after my baby was born, I started spending more time upstairs in their house while breastfeeding. She'd set up a quiet little nursing area for me. At first, I'd just sit there scrolling my phone, but eventually curiosity got the better of me. I started wandering. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs. I found 2 of them fully decorated as children's bedrooms. Tiny beds, toy boxes, stuffed animals, desks, old dolls. Everything looked untouched, almost frozen in time. The dolls were what bothered me the most. Their faces didn't look porcelain. They looked almost real. Their skin felt soft and rubbery, silicone. Their cloudy eyes seemed to follow me around the room, and I noticed something even more weird, if that was even possible. One closet had a lock on the outside. I was examining it as Jill appeared silently in the doorway. She had startled me so badly I almost screamed. For a moment, she simply stood there and stared at me. Then she smiled. I found myself apologizing for wandering, and she explained that she'd inherited her siblings' childhood belongings, and that's why everything was set up. I nodded. It made sense, I guess. But she kept glancing toward that locked closet, almost like she was waiting to see if I'd ask about it, but I never did. I just grabbed my baby and went downstairs. Over the next few months, I occasionally heard noises upstairs while nursing. Soft bumps, scratching sounds, things shifting inside the room where the locked closet was. I never investigated, though. Then came the day that changed everything. My youngest was about 6 months old. My husband and Bill were outside grilling. Jill was crawling around the floor chasing my toddler while he laughed hysterically. I sat nearby, rocking the baby. It was, seemingly, just another normal day at their house. Until she turned toward us. Still on her hands and knees, she opened her mouth wide and made this low, croaking sound. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like hers at all, she smiled and said, "Oh, you're so cute, I could eat you up." Yes, I could. You and your baby brother, I could eat you both up. The room went completely silent, and every hair on my body stood up. My toddler stopped laughing instantly and ran into my arms. One of the greyhounds they owned quietly whimpered and walked out of the room. And their African grey parrot suddenly started screaming, "Oh no, oh no, oh no," over and over. The bird was flapping so violently in its cage that it was shaking. Jill never broke eye contact. Her smile stretched impossibly wide, her breathing became slow and heavy, and I swear her eyes looked completely black. Then she blinked, looked away, and casually laughed. Phew, I'm not used to playing with little boys. She stood up, walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened, and I texted my husband one sentence: "We're leaving right now." On our drive home, I cried and told him everything. The dolls, the children's bedroom, the locked closet, the noises, the way she looked at our children, the animals' reactions, everything, every detail I finally told him. And I also told him that if he didn't take me seriously, I was done. He looked at my face, and for the first time since meeting Jill, he believed me. We went back only once to retrieve a few belongings we'd left behind. And while standing in the driveway saying goodbye, a little girl from across the street rode over on her bike to show Jill. Before she could even finish talking, her father sprinted across the street, grabbed her so fast it startled everyone, and stared directly at my husband. The look on his face, almost asking, "Why are your children here?" My husband looked at me and I could see it. He knew he should have listened to me from the beginning. We slowly stopped answering Jill's calls. She never pushed. She simply just disappeared from our lives. About a year later, we happened to be driving through that side of town. Curious, we decided to pass by their house. And it was gone. Burned to the ground, apparently. Only the mailbox remained standing.
I'm really going to try to make this video without sounding judgy, but there's just something about this place that people really seem to like that just makes my stomach hurt. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. I'm talking about House on the Rock in Spring Green, Wisconsin. It was built in the 1940s by this guy named Alex Jordan Jr. Apparently, he really liked Frank Lloyd Wright, but Frank Lloyd Wright didn't really like him. I don't know, that's all like alleged. But anyway, he decided he was going to try to top him. And what he made is disturbing. Most known for the world's largest carousel, which is this, and it has these flying, like life-size angel-looking things above it, and this 200-foot sea creature. This place is what nightmares are made of. If you've ever wanted to go and walk through a nightmare, if you've never experienced one, it's this. It's very dark, there's ceilings, it's low, it feels like nightmare fuel, and it reminds me a lot of Polar Express. If you know, you know. Walking down this little inside town, see, this is like the Polar Express part where she gets lost and it just keeps getting smaller and smaller, which, this creeps me out so bad talking about it, but look what's in the windows. Lovely, lovely, and it gets worse. Do you see how it just feels dark and heavy, and you can see the people there for scale, but check out this doll room of automated musicians. They play this creepy song, but a lot of people have reported seeing them change from like one to the other, like moving and doing something they're not supposed to do, or they'll be looking at one and one's like this, and then they look back and it's looking over like that. No, look at them. Look at this one down here. And what even is this supposed to be? It's some kind of cello thing? I don't know. It's got a 218-foot infinity room. This. Like I said, it's like the back rooms, like liminal spaces, things like that. More of what is even happening. These are just on the walls. See how like you walk in, that's just the carousel, just like this. Just rows and rows of nightmares. This is what it looks like from the outside. Who wants to go here? Again, I'm not judging you, but I kind of am because why? Why?
My mother made my brother promise not to tell me what he saw. Scary story time. I've never really been someone who believes in ghosts or anything like that, but this is one experience I've never been able to explain. When I was around 8 years old, my mom, a single parent at the time, moved me and my brother into a small apartment in a pretty rough area. It was low-income housing, a lot of crime, and there was even a police officer inside the complex. A watered-down version of the projects for the state I lived in, and I had a lot of weird stories living there, but this is the one that stuck with me. One night, everything was completely normal. I went to bed like usual, My bed faced directly towards my bedroom door, and I always slept curled up on my side because I was scared of everything as a kid. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was on my back, which again, I never do. That's when I looked at my door, and it was open. I never slept with it open because I was terrified of the dark. Standing in the hall outside my door was the woman. I know how cliche this sounds, but she was wearing a white lace dress with a small veil pinned into her hair. The part that didn't look normal was her skin. It looked blue and almost like it was rotting. She didn't move or speak. She just stood there staring directly at me. What's weird is I wasn't scared. I felt like I couldn't move, but my body wasn't fighting it. I knew I wasn't sleeping. I was a very anxious kid. I hated sleeping alone, and I scare easily. But in that moment, I didn't feel panic. I just stared back at her. I couldn't even see her chest rising and falling like she was breathing. After a while, I just closed my eyes and went back to sleep. The next morning, my door was closed. I told my mom what I saw, and she gave me a weird look, then changed the subject. My brother didn't say anything. Years later, when I was around 14 or 15, we were talking about that apartment at dinner. I brought up the story again, just casually. Everything went quiet. My brother looked at my mom and said, "I think she's old enough to know." Back then, his room was down the same hallway as mine. One night, he woke up thirsty and went to get water from the kitchen. When he stepped into the hallway, he saw a woman standing there. He described her exactly the same way I did. She didn't acknowledge him. She was just staring into my room. He got freaked out and went back to bed. The next morning, he told my mom. My mom panicked and then told him he couldn't tell me because she didn't want me to be too afraid to sleep alone. That same morning, I came into the kitchen and told them what I had seen. I hadn't thought about it much after that, but recently my sister told a story about how a few years prior, I was talking in my sleep about a woman outside on the swing set, dressed in white. She was laughing while telling the story. All I could picture was the same woman. Nothing like this has ever happened to me again, and we moved out of that apartment not long after. I still don't know what to make of it, but I still can see her clearly, even now. And that's the end of the story. So this story was found on the Ghost Stories subreddit, and I did want to read one interesting little comment that somebody left on the story. And this commenter went on to say, she, referring to the ghost, she probably was not looking at you, just in the room where a loved one may have died, or she was watching over a loved one, which was a very simple observation, but I don't know, I thought it was kind of cute. Maybe that's why OP didn't feel so scared when she saw the apparition, because maybe she didn't mean anything bad, and maybe it was something like that where she's unfortunately still lingering around, and maybe that room was occupied by somebody she cared for, or maybe even herself, and maybe it was just observing OP, and I don't know, had like a weird, I see myself in you kind of, I don't know, but I thought that was kind of interesting, observation, like I said. But kind of still eerie that OP saw the ghost. Looked kind of like it kind of reminded me like a corpse, like a bride corpse or corpse bride, I guess. And she's dressed in white with her little veil, with her skin being all discolored. I would be terrified. I think generally anybody would be absolutely terrified and mortified. But the fact that OP, even though they described themselves as being very easily scared, weren't scared, was at least comforting that they weren't scared, and was able to go back to sleep. Could not be me. Could never be me. This lifetime, next lifetime, absolutely not. But luckily, they said that nothing had happened to them after that. They had that experience. It wasn't uncomfortable or scary. It was just maybe a little unsettling, and unsettling that they weren't unsettled. But yeah, so what do you think it was? Do you think it was a ghost from the past, or I don't know. I think it was something that lingered, the veil thinned, and they slipped through and OP saw. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know.
Creepy story time. The person who submitted this wishes to remain anonymous, so we're gonna call her Allie. So Allie is originally from New Orleans, and 1 week before Katrina hit, she decided to move back to her parents' house. A few days before the hurricane hit, they evacuated the area and ended up staying in Houston, Texas for about a month. Thankfully, the area where her parents' house was in New Orleans only received wind damage. They received very little water damage. After they went back, it was extremely sad to see the destruction that Katrina caused all around them. They were one of the first people in their street to return home. Once Allie got back, everything about that whole area and even her home just didn't feel right. One night, as she's laying in bed in the dark, just thinking about everything and just kind of letting her thoughts take her away, she starts to hear what sounds like a woman crying right outside of her bedroom window. Allie decided to sit up a little bit because there was no way that she was actually hearing what she was hearing. None of her neighbors were back yet, and right by her bedroom window was just a very tall wooded fence. She was a little scared at first, but decided to ignore it. The next day, she walked up and down the block to see if any of her neighbors had made their way back, and no one was home. Her neighbors actually didn't come back to their houses until a couple weeks later. Her first thought was that she may have heard La Llorona, but then I was talking to her, and from what I'm getting is with so much deaths and so much chaos and so much tragedy that happened in New Orleans when Katrina took place, I honestly don't believe it was La Llorona. I do believe that it was so many lost souls, so many people died in such, tragic ways that it could have been just a lost soul who realized what happened and were mourning their loss, the loss of them, the loss of their houses, the loss of their families.
About a year ago, I had an alien encounter, and I don't mean I was abducted. I mean I literally saw, heard the whole alien. I asked ChatGPT to create a image based on everything that I saw, and it would not, because it said it was real. So I was like, well, what if it's fiction? And then it created the image, and it looked exactly like what I witnessed, and I am going to show you the alien that I saw. Keep in mind, I only saw the back of the alien. Here we go. It was about 7 feet tall. So this was about a year ago, and at that time I lived with my dad. My dad has an old plantation-style home with about 3 or 4 acres, and there's a good amount of land with no fencing. Usually every night I go to the back patio and I just sit down and relax. I see deer, I see coyotes, I see skunks, I see raccoons, I see all of it, and it didn't really bother me ever. But that night when I went outside, I had this crazy sinking feeling. I mean, it felt like my heart dropped to my stomach and I was like about to poop myself. I ignored it, and I sat down in my usual spot anyway, in the back patio. And that is when I hear this weird clicking, hissing sound. It was like breathing. It was like a that kind of sound. I'm freaking myself out. Okay. I stand up and I immediately turn around, and this thing is 7 feet tall, a blue-gray color, like overly muscular, skinny, long hands. It's standing, and then it just crouches down really fast. But I can still see the spine when it crouched down, and it was still making that sound. I've always been interested in aliens. I've always wondered. This, I have no question ever again. They exist. So what did I do? I had the feeling that this was really bad. This was not a nice alien. Whatever this was, it was not nice. So I immediately ran into the house, I locked the door, and I went upstairs and hid there for the entire night and barely slept. I think I know what the alien was doing there, and I think I know why I saw it. I did see this alien 6 months later, but in a whole different setting and from further away. That is my story.
This being was here on purpose. This was not a mistake. The ship didn't crash. They weren't lost. They knew what they were doing. She has a connection to this family. Before we all freak out, a lot of us have connections to darker vibration and higher vibration families. I'm not convinced just yet that when she felt scared and her stomach dropped, that was because this being was bad. It could be, and we will look to her to tell us. It also could be that she was remembering her connection to this group. We've all moved through different bodies, plant, animal, alien. So we're all inevitably going to experience darker vibrations and higher vibrations. but sometimes the memory recall can be jarring and unnerving. We're hearing more and more about these stories, whether they're recent sightings or they're from a long time ago and people are remembering or feeling safe and comfortable to come out. Either way, these beings are here, and they're here for a reason. And that reason is to help us evolve, whether it's through struggle or whether it's through light. Call letters I'm getting for the planet are MH370F432. In that order, but the last few numbers may move a bit. I understand there's a missing flight MH370. I'm just sharing what I am being told. And they have a lot to say. I don't want to interfere with her growth and her experience. So I really want her to share what she knows, what she feels, and first, because I feel like she's got a wealth of knowledge to teach all of us. One thing that stands out about this is Harlow and I both had the same reaction, which was, man, she's good at imitating their sounds. So that lends us to believe there's a possibility these beings are very familiar to her, and this isn't the first time she's encountered them, but this may be the first time she's encountered them in this body, in this life.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
What's the craziest conspiracy theory you actually believe? They only made AI so easily accessible and hard to avoid, so we have to use it. It collects info on you. AI is really fast with doing all that. Imagine how much it knows about you. It knows where you live, your voice, so many things about you. It just feels weird. What are they going to do with all of that info? McDonald's human flesh burgers. It is so far out there, but the more I read about it, the more it makes sense in a way. John Wayne Gacy, while a complete monster, was a patsy for a much larger politically connected ring of unalivers and rapists. Okay, I've actually heard about this one. Apparently he had like a lot of connections to like rich people, well-known people, and obviously what he did was wrong, but some believe that he was actually covering up for much more powerful people than him. When you dream about yourself in various situations, you are actually viewing yourself through the lens of another you, in another dimension, living in infinite parallel existences created at random. Okay, this one I actually freaking believe, y'all. I have the craziest, most vivid dreams, and I truly believe that that is another version of myself living that life. Not sure believe would be the word, but I remain skeptical. The claims that certain celebrities have been replaced with clones, or at least the most elite among them, share the same bloodlines. I am not sure what to make of it, but the claims always pique my interest. Cats were dropped off by aliens to keep an eye on us. They were worshipped in ancient Egypt for a reason. Those little creatures know a lot more than we know. That we humans are 100% not from this planet. I mean, we aren't adapted whatsoever to the environment alone without shelter from the sun, the cold, the rain, and snow without dying. It's a water planet, for fuck's sake. We're not nocturnal at all, nor have evolved in any way to deal with the environments without shelter. We also get sick, get diseases, allergies, cancers, more so than any other species on Earth. So yeah, I'm not buying it. Money is our currency. The elite, is there a better word than this, have a completely different system that is unpleasant and horrific. That little people live in the ground. We're being energetically farmed by an interdimensional reptilian race that feeds off low frequencies that we emit when we have negative emotions. They've strategically set the whole world up to make everyone as miserable and stressed and unhealthy as possible, because when we feel bad and the frequency emanating from our electromagnetic field becomes low, they consume these low frequencies as their food in a sense. It's the root of all issues on our planet. We are not the first intelligent civilization on Earth, possibly not even top 50, and we won't be the last. There is so much shit that has been lost, forgotten, obscured, or hidden about the planet's past, it's ridiculous. If humanity ends today, there will be nothing left for future beings to discover. Maybe some rubble, maybe. All of our information, all of our legacy, all of our history is stored in computer drives which fail if I look at it funny, let alone surviving and being readable a million years from now.
We won't leave any physical trace of us existing either. Makes me wonder how many other civilizations rose and fell in the hundreds of millions of years without leaving much of a mark or a memory of it being there. That is scary to think about. Saving the best for last, the one that I believe the most, there's more to Antarctica than they're telling us. I'm gonna make a video on all the weird shit about Antarctica pretty soon. Let us know in the comments which conspiracy theory you believe the most. Love you, bye.
Let's read a couple scary stories from a mortician. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. I've been a mortician for 36 years. I have embalmed over 12,000 bodies. During my career, I had 2 extremely significant events which changed everything, how I used to believe about death and the afterlife. I'm a Christian, but the 2 events in my career has made me question everything. I have never shared these 2 stories because I don't know how people will take it. Here is my first incident. It was approximately 2 a.m. and I just finished embalming. I had approximately 6 bodies all embalmed on tables with white sheets over them. I had taken off my gown and gloves and walked across the room and opened the door. Right when I was about to turn off the lights, I had a rush of pressure that pushed me from behind. I need to say this push was not a regular push, not a focal point type of push when it was directed on your middle, back, or arm, or a push in a small area of my body. This was the type of wall push that touched the back of my ears and the back of my heels and everything in between. I was moved approximately 1 foot before I ran as fast as I could out the garage door. I jumped into my gray Volkswagen Jetta and drove to my condominium. When I was home, I sat down in my chair and spoke to Jesus and spoke out loud saying, I do not know how I offended you or if you were mad at me, but I'm very sorry. I remember looking at my right arm because my skin was tingling as I was saying all of this. All the hairs on my right arm looked like my skin was pickled. My hairs were standing straight up. I had never seen my hairs like that before. And here is my second incident. This is a completely new funeral home, and 23 years later from my first story. I was entering the funeral home to embalm. This was approximately 9 p.m. at night. As an embalmer, we do work at all hours. I was in a prep room and took off my gown and gloves and went down the hallway to grab a bottle of water out of the snack room. I then walked down the hallway back to the prep room. As I was walking back, there is a mirror in front of me down the long hall. Behind me is a glass door with our outside light on. As I was walking toward the mirror, a person walked to the door and turned and stopped. I saw this but took a couple steps farther and immediately turned around and screamed. The person was no longer there. It was a spirit who was behind me that I saw in the mirror in front of me. When I screamed, and it continued to scream as I ran out of the funeral home. It then continued to scream as I just stood in the parking lot. And the scream was my scream the whole time. It took my voice and copied it. Sounds like the second story was a mimic. Let me know what you think, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to share, just send me a DM.
Series of spooky stories, except for its women's intuition part. I don't know. I was talking to this guy in the Marines, went on a few dates, we started dating. I prayed the removal prayer. I don't know why, but I felt compelled to. A week later, I had an overwhelming urge to check his TikTok followers. Mind you, I never do that unless I have a reason to. And I see that he's following another girl, whereas before he only followed me. I confronted him, he brushed it off, saying that he was friends with her because she was about to ship out. I dropped the subject, and the next day we get into a mini argument, and he confesses she told him she had feelings and he never told me, and they hung out outside of professional settings. That's not cheating to me, but clearly a breach of my trust, and we broke up. Yeah, because bitch, why are you lying? Why are you lying, especially after this girl told you that she had feelings for you? Not spooky, but 2 years ago, my boyfriend went on a work event that I just knew would end up in a club. I know his coworkers. I told him that he can go, no problem, but he just needs to let me know if he's gonna go, so I'm not gonna be worried. Anyway, he didn't tell me. I ended up falling asleep, and around 3 a.m., I heard club music playing in my ears. Got up, checked his location, and there he was. Communication is so simple. I had a dream my ex-husband and his fiance were pregnant, woke up at 1 a.m. and texted him, we have a daughter, hence the contact. He asked why. Had a dream that they had a baby girl early. They gave birth 5 weeks early to a baby girl. He was shocked. A week ago, I had to drive to the city to check in on my friend's dog. I live in a small town about 20 minutes outside of the city. As I was passing the last gas stations, I had the feeling that I had to get gas. I had over half a tank of gas, enough to get home 5 times over, and I'm a fill up when empty type of person. But I had to get gas, so I pulled into the gas station, and as I'm pumping my gas, a white car pulls into the lot with a guy swearing at someone, tell them to get out of his car, along with a number of expletives. I glance over as he rips out of the parking lot, and there's a woman standing there with a child. He let her and their daughter be stranded in a not great part of the city. Her daughter was the same age and size as my daughter, who was in daycare, so I had a safe seat for her. She offered me money to give her a ride. When I asked her where she was going, it was the exact same town that I was heading to. Something or someone needed me there to get her and the little girl home that day. What a piece of shit, man. Unbelievable. At 30 weeks pregnant, I had a dream where my deceased papa told me that my son was going to be born early. I had an OB appointment the next day and she told me that he's head down, but don't worry, babies move around a lot. She rolled her eyes when I told her about my dream. 4 days later, I went into preterm labor and felt no pain at all. Only reason that I went in was because my dog was staring at me weird. Real. Animals know more than we do. When they asked me at the hospital if I was in labor, I had to tell them I wasn't sure. Luckily, they checked me to just be sure. I was already at a 5, and within 20 minutes, I was at a 9. I had no pain at all. During delivery, they had to tell me what to push. My son did a month in the NICU and came home right before 35 weeks, perfectly healthy. My mom's, she was taking her smoke break at her job in the middle of town. The streets were oddly quiet for that time of the day, and she swears to this day that she had witnessed a big red truck crash and roll down the street. When she went to look, there was absolutely nothing there. No debris, no truck. Later that day, we learned that my ex and uncle got into a one-car accident and ex had to be airlifted away. Uncle just had a broken arm, thankfully, and he drove a red truck. Come back for part, I don't know, 15 or 16.
I'm back with another video for you guys. I know you guys been waiting. Ever since last week, things been happening since then. I don't necessarily feel like it's bad or it's good. It's just weird. So, as of yesterday, I'm using the bathroom, right? I'm not even too long in the bathroom. Me and my brother were having a conversation and he was standing outside of the bathroom. In the middle of our conversation, when I opened the curtain to walk out, I noticed that something fell. Like, I didn't see what fell. I just heard it. My brother proceeds to tell me that the deodorant that was on the speaker outside of the bathroom fell, but it flew. It didn't just fall on the ground. It actually like flew across the dining room. That's weird. I tried to tell him not to pay it no mind. I'm not paying it no mind. He picks up the deodorant and puts it back. But then as I'm walking into my room, my brother proceeds to tell me that ever since last week, things been falling, randomly just falling. But every single time something is falling, it's literally flying. Like if somebody's throwing it or pushing it. So then he proceeds to tell me another time that when he was at work on Sunday that just passed, he was at work, he was in the back of the job. He was picking up the fries and putting it into the buckets, because when you work at Five Guys or whatever, or the fast foods, they have like sinks full of fries filled with ice in it so that the fries stay cold and stuff. And when you put it in the buckets, you bring it to the front and you put it in the little container so that you could drop it in the fryers. He was sent back there to go get the fries, and while he was back there getting the fries, there was like a whole bunch of cups put into like little like bags, and for some reason he didn't touch them. They were like that all day. All of the cups fell on top of him and was all over the place, right? That was the first thing that happened to him at work. Second thing that happened was when he was in the fry station. So let's say I'm looking at the fry station, right? These are the fries. On top of the fry station, it's like the salt and the Cajun, so that you can get like salt or Cajun fries. And then on this side of the fry station is the boilers for the fries. As he's, I guess, putting fries into the bags, somehow the salt shaker flies into the hot oil. And everybody at the job, including the managers and the other coworkers, got mad at my brother because they was like, how the fuck did you manage to do that? How the hell did you slap the the salt shaker all the way into the fries? And he was just like, I swear that was not me. And they were not having it. They were not believing him. He's just like, that was not me. It took 2 of them to get the salt shaker out of the fry station, the hot oil, and both of them burnt their fingers and their hands while trying to grab it out. Like, they had to use something to grab it out. They gotta get a new salt shaker now, but like, It's just crazy how everything keeps flying, right? We're going to talk about yesterday after the thing with the deodorant. I'm in my room. I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and I'm just laying down, and I have my TV remote, my Roku remote, and I went to put it on my table. As soon as I went to put it on my table, I'm holding it tight enough for me to put it on the table, and my arm is like out enough for it to land on the table if it did fall out of my hands. But for some reason, it fell that way, and the batteries ended up underneath my bed. I was like, that's weird. That was the first time that happened to me. Second time, I got up after that because I was just like, I'm hungry. I got up. I went to go make some noodles with some kimchi. And as I'm mixing my noodles, my whole cup of noodles falls out of my hand. And I'm just like, how did that just fall out of my hands? Because I'm holding on to it tight. Even though I know it's hot, I'm holding on to it tight. And I'm mixing my noodles. But somehow the shit falls and like goes that way. It doesn't just fall down. And I ended up burning myself with the hot water and the hot kimchi and all that. And I was just so pissed off. I was like, I don't even want to eat anymore. And I was just in my room on my way to sleep thinking about everything that he told me. And I'm like, this is really weird. But yeah, that's my story time for you guys. Make sure you guys follow me and comment your opinions on this. It could be just a coincidence. I don't really know, but I decided to share that with you guys.